Hey there and welcome. My name is Devin Knight. We have a really exciting day today where we're going to be looking at Power Virtual Agents in a class called Power Virtual Agents in a Day. So we're going to be in a very short amount of time digging very deep into what you can learn with Power Virtual Agents. Well, hi again. My name is Devin Knight. I am the training president at Pragmatic Works, so I focus on a lot of different training all around the Power Platform. And in today's class, we're going to be really diving in deep into what you can do with Power Virtual Agents. Now, for many of you, Power Virtual Agents is a very new course. One, because it's a very new product. It just came out last October and was added as part of the Power Platform. And so it may be very new to you. So we're going to explore not only the basics of what Power Virtual Agents can do for you, but we're also going to get rather hands-on. And that's going to be a fun experiment here, as we have many folks that are on the stream here with us. But hopefully I've got you set up so that you can be successful with this, because what we've done for you is we've actually given ahead of time everyone that signed up in advance a login to be able to follow along with a tenant that I've set up, really, again, to make you successful for today's class. So let's go ahead and jump in, and I want to show you a couple things here on my screen to get you going for today. So you'll notice here, of course, I have in the top right several things that are going to be really key for today. One being the class files. So if you haven't already, you want to make sure you download the class files, and you'll see a link to it here. I have a few colleagues that are actually in the YouTube stream with us as well that will share that link as well, and that will give you the ability to follow along with the material for today. Once you've downloaded that zip file, you want to make sure that you have unzipped it on your workstation, somewhere on maybe just directly on your C drive, just so you can find it very easily as we go through the class. You're also going to need the credentials that I sent you in advance. Now, if you're watching this stream later, at a later date, you can, of course, use your own login credentials. The main reason why I gave folks that signed up in advance login credentials is because there are some things that you'll need to have set up that you could have potential restrictions within your organization. Maybe your organization doesn't allow you personally to create your own common data service databases. And so I've actually done that in advance for those of you that have signed up. Now, if you aren't seeing that, if you didn't receive that login information, I do want to encourage you to look for, it could have gone to your spam, but we sent 2 emails out yesterday, and one of them looked like this. This was actually a follow-up email that we sent later, and this email had your login information as well as the password. You'll see the login information is blank here, but you should have received a login for yourself. Now, if you didn't, I would encourage you to actually contact Matt Peterson, who's part of my team, and he's actually in the chat right now as well. And he has a list of some extra logins that if for some reason you weren't able to get one, you can contact him and he will, I need to spell his email right though, he will actually give you a login to be ready to go for today. And if you've signed up in advance, he already has a login for you. He'll just give you the one that you already have assigned to you. So that's one thing to get going right off the bat is I have a special tenant login that I've given you that has a lot of things that will actually save you about 30 minutes to an hour worth of time of just configuring your environment for the class. So that's already ready to go for you. Just make sure you have this email, or if you don't have that email, Matt can assist you. And he's not going to assist you through chat. I would recommend he assist you via email to make sure that you're able to get that. All right, so that information is going to be key for today. Make sure you have that handy as we get going through the first module as we want to do our prerequisites. The other thing I want to draw your attention into is we're going to be referencing a couple times throughout the day, and we'll also send you this link later after the class. So if you registered with us in advance, you'll get a few things after class. One of those will be our Chatbot cookbook. And the Chatbot cookbook is full of information. It's about a 15-page document that just has a lot of great information about why you should use chatbots. It's great for kind of making this ROI. If you're kind of going back to your boss, or perhaps you are the one that's trying to make this decision of whether you should use chatbots or not. We have this great cookbook that really backs up the reasons for using chatbots. And so I recommend if you don't just go ahead and download it from here, we'll also send it to you after the class is over as well. All right, so let's get started. Again, my name is Devin Knight. Briefly about myself, I am the training president. So we have 2 divisions at Pragmatic Works, Consulting and Training. I run the training part of our business. I'm also a Microsoft Data Platform MVP. That just means that Microsoft has recognized me for evangelizing their products. And I've also written several books all around the Power Platform. Many of those are around SQL Server, as well as Power BI, Power Automate, and Power Apps. And we have a new book coming out very soon that's going to be across the entire Power Platform. So you'll see that coming out very soon. I'm also, this is really just to tell you a little bit about myself, where I'm from. I contribute to a local Power BI user group, the Jacksonville Power BI user group. So I'm from Jacksonville, Florida is really the only point to that, to tell you where I'm from. And then finally, if you're really interested in following up and reading more about content that I create, you can follow me at my blog at devinknightsql.com. So feel free to take a look at that to connect with me afterwards. And as well, you can see my Twitter, if you're a Twitter person, and my email there as well. All right, so we have a pretty chock-full day. We have a lot of material to cover in a short amount of time. We will get a break in, probably about halfway through. We'll take a break. Just a reminder, the class is to be run between 11 and 2 o'clock Eastern time. So that's Eastern time. Make sure if you're adjust based on your time zone. But we have a lot of material to cover, so we're going to jump rather quickly into it. I'm going to not just kind of linger over the overview here. We're going to jump rather quickly into actually getting into some of the material. But we're going to get into, of course, some introductions. This is also part of the reason why I wanted to make sure that I gave you some prerequisites ahead of time, where I have that login information for you. Will help you skip some of the prerequisite steps that really aren't relevant to Power Virtual Agents. So we're going to help you jump over some of those things. We're also then going to jump into how you can actually start to build your first Power Virtual Agents, what it's going to entail. And then we're going to talk about things like Power Automate and how does Power Automate integrate into Power Virtual Agents to really extend its capability and allow it to do more than what you can just do with Power Virtual Agents by itself. So Power Automate is a great way to extend the capability. And then in the last module, we're going to focus in on optimizations that you can do with inside Power Virtual Agents. I will note here that our last section, the section on optimization, a lot of it's more theory. So you'll actually find that a lot of that will be more discussion. And we might be able to even jump through some of those areas a little faster, just because I want to make sure I show you the hands-on pieces more than anything else today. I want to make sure you have the opportunity to see that, how I would actually do these elements. All right, so we're going to jump straight into our first piece here, which is all around kind of getting familiar with Power Virtual Agents as a whole. So if you're not really familiar with it, again, it's a rather new tool, so it's okay if it's new to you, but I want to give you familiarity with what the tool can actually do. And if you're not really familiar with chatbots in general, what does chatbots do for you? What can chatbots do to help your organization? And it's all around automation and trying to give a personal feel to an automated task of interacting with either customers externally or even internal employees. So a lot of people don't think about using chatbots internally, but it most certainly can be done that way as well. All right, so again, I mentioned a couple times already that Power Virtual Agents is part of a larger system called the Power Platform. And the Power Platform is full of various low-code platform applications that allow you to do things like reporting and analytics. That's done through Power BI. It also allows you to build your own business applications through Power Apps. And that's a low-code application that allows you as a citizen developer to build your own application. You'll hear that term citizen developers a lot when you're referring to Power Platform. You'll also be able to use things like Power Automate. Power Automate is a great tool for workflow automation and allowing you to take these tasks that are kind of remedial tasks that can be automated in some way, and it can actually automate those processes. And then finally, the focus for today is Power Virtual Agents. And Power Virtual Agents is all around building these intelligent chatbots that can not only automate conversations with customers, but make them even feel personal and make them actionable so they can actually take forward requests from customers and not only respond to them, but actually do additional actions. And this whole Power Platform has a lot of interconnectivity between the various tools. There's hundreds of data connectors that all of the different systems can use. You have things like external capabilities with portals. You even have AI Builder that's actually connected in with every one of these tools. There's AI capabilities that can actually enhance what Power BI, Power Automate, Power Apps, and Power Virtual Agents can do all in one. And then the Common Data Service is this kind of overarching platform to store data and allow you to really interconnect in with smaller subsystems of data as well. So a lot going in with all these different elements. Now, when you think of chatbots, there's a lot of different reasons why people choose chatbots. And it really kind of starts with this idea of, if you think about yourself, most people generally try to start with a self-service solution first. I know I had an incident with Amazon recently where I had something that didn't get shipped or didn't arrive in a proper amount of time. My first gut reaction is I'm going to go and try and see if I can solve this myself with some kind of automated chat system, because on Amazon, really a lot of different large companies have automated chatbots. And so my first goal is, how can I solve this problem myself using some kind of interactive component they have? So 66%, and you'll actually see where these stats come from here in a moment, 66% of people try to use self-service first rather than actually contacting a live agent for assistance. So there's definitely a need for this, as you can see here. And then 90% of customers expect kind of this consistency or continuity across channels, meaning if I were to actually dial in and talk to someone live, I would expect kind of the same experience that I have if I were interacting with an automated system. And this is all, of course, leading into how Power Virtual Agents can be designed in a way to feel like it has continuity across live people as well as the chatbot capability. And then finally, the last thing here is 59% of channels are managed in silos. So what does that mean? Managed in silos means you have a lot of subsystems behind the scenes. Maybe you have a marketing platform. Maybe you have a CRM in the background. You have all these different subsystems in the background. And each of those are oftentimes managed in silos, meaning they're not interconnected. They're not interconnected in with your chatbot very well, which also means that it's difficult for your chatbots to be able to tap into those various subsystems and produce results and produce action items. And that's one of the things where Power Virtual Agents excels, is it can actually tap into those various subsystems that you have, either through APIs or through Power Virtual Agent, to give you the capability to actually use those various subsystems that you have that are not connected, that are siloed from everything else, but still use it within inside of your chatbot capable tool here. All right. So chatbots are great, right? I'm talking them up. I'm talking them up as if they can solve all the problems, but they certainly can't, right? There are some issues that sometimes people consider when it comes to chatbots. One is chatbots can be expensive to create and maintain. And you'll see as I go through this that Power Virtual Agents actually answers some of these problems. But in general, chatbots can be expensive to maintain and expensive to create when you have to have a developer that does all the work for you. So are you going to hire a developer full-time for multiple months to be able to develop a chatbot for you? Well, when it comes to tools like Power Virtual Agents, it actually gives the data consumer, or I should say the citizen developer, the ability to create the chatbot themselves and define what the chatbot is going to do. So that capability is actually given to the subject matter expert, and the subject matter expert is put in charge of defining how the chatbot is going to answer the questions that come from your customers. The other thing often is there's this impedance between the subject matter expert with the answers and the developer or the data scientist who's creating the chatbot. So that's oftentimes a big hindrance, where you have this break between the person developing the solution and the person that has all the answers. Well, Power Virtual Agents also has a kind of solution to that, where your citizen developers, that subject matter expert, is actually the one that's creating the solution as well. And then, of course, chatbots aren't all really necessarily going to be that useful unless they are going to connect into the back-end systems that have the answers. And again, Power Virtual Agents has the capability to tap in either via an API or using Power Automate to tie into those various subsystems that you have and generate answers for your customers. All right, so really the idea here with Power Virtual Agents is that it's meant to engage naturally with your customers. It's meant to be able to interpret things through AI. So if a customer asks a question one way, but you're not expecting it that exact way, it's able to interpret that through the AI capabilities that are built in. There's a lot of Azure Cognitive Services that are built into Power Virtual Agents. And then you also have this continuity again that's really enhanced when you can pass off from a chatbot to a live user. So you have the ability to pass off chatbot interactions and chats to a live person, and that's a great capability that's baked in. And then, like we mentioned a couple times, the chatbots actually have the ability to take action with inside Power Virtual Agents. It has the ability to make it so that whenever someone wants to log into their account, they can actually do it within inside the chatbot itself. They can log in and produce information that would require a login to send back to the users. So there's all this interconnected capability built into Power Virtual Agents that really makes it go far and above what the more traditional chatbot can do. All right. So again, who is Power Virtual Agents for? Well, it's really designed for multiple groups. One is for your customers, so your external customers that are going to be interacting with and asking questions. It's certainly meant for them. but it's also meant for the subject matter expert. The subject matter expert in the types of questions that the customers would ask are typically going to be those that are authoring the chatbot topics that your customers will interact with. You'll still see, in some cases, a lot of cases, you'll still need some IT involvement or developer involvement to integrate it in with your website or to integrate it in with Skype or integrate it in with Teams. That integration piece is often still going to need a developer in some cases because there'll be some integration steps that need to be done and some embedding steps to embed it in your website. But the core pieces and the longest part of development of any chatbot is defining the topics and defining how are those interactions going to work between your customers and you, or in this case, your automated chatbot. And so the subject matter expert is really who needs to learn the most about Power Virtual Agents because they're going to be defining that, how it works and how it interacts with your customers. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the life cycle of a Power Virtual Agent project. What does it look like to create a project for Power Virtual Agents? There's really multiple steps here that are going to be key. The first part in creating the bot and using the interactive capabilities, the GUI that's provided with inside Power Virtual Agents is very simple. It's very simple to get started with Power Virtual Agents. What's difficult is it doesn't stop with just a simple creation. There is this kind of life cycle where you go back and you make constant improvements. There will not be a Power Virtual Agents project that will be done after the first iteration and you're done with it forever. You often will revisit it to see how your customers are interacting with it and how you can improve it. So you're, of course, going to start by creating some topics, and you can create topics very easily by even pointing Power Virtual Agents to like a frequently asked questions page you have. So you can point Power Virtual Agents to a web page, and it can interpret topics automatically for you. We're going to show you that a little bit today, and it'll allow you to create topics automatically. You can then author your own topics using the natural language capabilities that are built in, and you can do things like variables to make it so you can pass values back and forth and interact with your chatbot very easily. And then, of course, we've mentioned a couple times now, you can integrate your bot with Power Automate. Power Automate gives you really this expanded capability to make it so that your chatbot is not very limited. You have a lot of things that you can do. And then you can even have, I mentioned there's some interaction you can have with developers earlier. You can even have developers create new skills, kind of like you might hear of Alexa skills. If you have an Alexa at home, they have skills you can add in. You can do the same thing with your chatbot. So you can have a developer that creates this integration with an API of one of your systems and be able to integrate that into your chatbot as well. That's kind of an extended capability, not something you have to do, but you can certainly add additional features if you needed to there. The next step would be I would take my bot and then basically send it off to any kind of bot framework channels. This would be how I would integrate it with Teams or how I would integrate it with my website or the different systems that I want to integrate my bot with is the next step. So I would publish it and then make it available to these different systems that I interact with. And then the last step, which of course, this is kind of a cycle, you'll start over once you get to this last step, is you will monitor the bot for performance and make sure that it's actually solving the problems that you anticipate it should solve. So you have the ability within inside of the analytics piece to see which bots are more successful, which topics specifically are most successful, and then you can look and see how many times that topic has had an escalation or how many times that topic has had a resolved solution. And so you're able to really kind of interact with and see from a reporting standpoint how successful your bots have been. All right, so again, the Power Virtual Agents is built on top of the Power Platform. We've talked about that pretty heavily. The couple pieces on the bottom here, the bottom left, I'll highlight a little bit more in depth, are it's also built on top of the Microsoft Bot Framework. This is super powerful. This is actually the piece that a lot of developers use to develop chatbots, is the Bot Framework. But you're given that capability of the Bot Framework in this citizen developer designed tool, allowing end users or subject matter experts to take advantage of the Bot Framework without having to know the nitty-gritty of how to define it. You just need to know how to basically use this nice GUI interface to create this conversation with your customers. It also is used on top of the Azure Cognitive Services. And Cognitive Services is what gives you the AI capability to be able to interpret things that people are asking and say, oh, they've asked for this, they really mean this. So you're able to interpret what a customer says as something else based on the AI capabilities that are built into Azure Cognitive Services. And the great news is you don't have to know anything about those things. You don't have to know anything about the bot framework. You don't have to know anything about cognitive services because the Power Virtual Agent is built on top of them and making it so that it actually just works without you having to be an expert in all those other more technical aspects of creating bots. All right. So, real quick summary of this section, we talked about the capabilities that you have with Power Virtual Agents, that it's designed for multiple people, that it's really focused for customers and has this connectivity into all this extendability with things like Power Automate, as well as advanced skills that your developers can create, and is developed on top of the Microsoft Bot Framework. So there's a lot of great capabilities here. So what we're going to do in our first hands-on, we're already jumping into our first hands-on in the first few minutes here, is we're going to set up and make sure that you're really ready to go for the class. So I had shown on the screen before, and I'm going to pop it back open one more time, is you'll want to make sure you have the course files downloaded, which you can see in the top right here. It's aka.ms/ and you can read the rest. And again, this class is based off of the Power Virtual Agent in a Day material. So make sure you have that downloaded and unzipped on your machine. Once you do, you will see files that look like this. Now, I put my own little instructor files folder in here for myself, but you'll have all of these other files that you see here available, and something that we're going to use throughout the day. We're going to start on Lab 1. So I actually recommend, and ideally you have multiple screens today. If you don't, it's not the end of the world. But I do recommend that you have multiple screens because you're going to want to have the lab file open. Even though I'm going through it with you, there's going to be multiple times you're going to want to copy and paste things from the labs because it'll just save you a lot of typing. So we're going to go ahead and open up lab number 1. And you can just double click on it to open it, and I have it open already right here. And I have some great news for you. Lab number 1 is one of the longer labs, but I've actually done some work, some legwork, to help you skip much of the work that you have here. Because a lot of the work that you'll find in the first 2 tasks, let me unzoom here for a moment, you'll see I'm actually going to have you start on page 19 in lab number 1. The reason for that is because the first 18 pages walk you through how to set up your environment, and I have done all of this for you. So the first 18 pages are knocked out, you can skip those, and you're going to start with me on task number 3. Now, the key part of this working for you to be able to skip the first 18 pages, is you're going to need to use that login that I provided you that has the information that you'll use to log in. So that'll be pretty key. Again, we emailed those. Matt Peterson, who's in the chat with you, can also provide that information for you. I provided his email earlier for you to be able to get that login. All right. One thing that's also worth mentioning as we get into some hands-on stuff here is because we chose to use YouTube streaming here, YouTube Live, because it allows you to rewind at any point in time. So if you feel like, if you want to follow along, you certainly can. I would tell you, you do not have to, but we did provide that login information for you. And if you ever feel like there's a moment where I go a little bit too fast, keep in mind you can always do a quick little rewind, and you can go back a step and see what I did again. So if you are working with one screen today, feel free to pause at any time and go back and see what I did, and then you'll be able to catch back up. So you have the ability to kind of keep up very easily, just built within the streaming platform. Okay, good deal. So now that we've got the kind of prerequisites of how we're going to do this out of the way, we're going to start, again, on page 19 in the labs, on lab number 1. And the first step here is we're going to log into make.powerapps.com. So you can either launch your web browser, or you can just click the link in the labs. Again, I do recommend you keep the labs open for this, because there are quite a few times you'll want to click and interact with what things that are in the labs themselves. But you're going to go to make.powerapps.com. Okay, I'm actually going to start it again just to make sure you guys can see this. Make.powerapps.com, and when you get there, it's going to prompt you to sign in. Now, you all, like I mentioned, have a login that's been sent to you. If you would like to use your own personal login, you need to make sure you have a CDS environment, or an environment with CDS enabled in it. I've done that for you to save you a lot of time. So I have a login that I'm going to be using, and I'm going to go ahead and type it in. You should use the one I emailed you. Don't use mine. And once I get that in here, I'll go ahead and sign in. I'm going to copy that just so I can easily have it later. And everyone's password is the same. It's test@word1. Okay? test@word1, all lowercase. All right. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and paste in my login information somewhere else. All right, so you can go ahead and sign in. If you're, you may or may not want to hold on to this information because it's not your normal one, so I'm going to go ahead and hit no on that. And this is going to launch you into Power Apps. Now, you might be wondering, why am I going into Power Apps for a Power Virtual Agent class? The reason for that is there's a couple key things that is provided to you in the class files that you'll need to bring into your environment to follow along for today. The first thing I would definitely want you to check is to make sure that the environment you're using, and you can see the environments up in the top right-hand corner of the screen, right here, you'll find environments after you get logged in. Where it says environments, you want to make sure that you're pointing to the one here called Dev Lab Admin, and then you'll have likely a different number than me. Okay, so don't worry so much about the number, but make sure you select up on the top and select Dev Lab Admin, whatever the number is. You might have one also here that's called Contoso, or you might have one that's called Productivity, something. There's some different ones that pop up, but the one that we're going to use for today is Dev Lab Admin, so make sure that's selected. Okay. Once you've selected that environment, you're then going to go over to the Solutions section. So you're going to go over to the far left where you'll find Solutions and go ahead and select that. Okay, and you'll find there's various solutions that have already been enabled in here, but we're going to be importing a solution that was provided with inside the class files. So again, find Solutions on the left-hand side. Once you have found that, we're going to select that we want to import a solution. Okay. So you're going to go up to the import option right here. Now, one thing I should note here before I go too far, you want to make sure that pop-ups are enabled in your web browser. So if you have pop-ups turned off on this particular site, you will likely have a little miss here because it's going to pop up and ask you to find the file location for what you want to import, which is going to be in the class files. So that's why I told you earlier, make sure you unzip your class files because you're going to have to go select something within those class files in here in a few moments. So make sure pop-ups are enabled on your web browser for this point here. All right, so we're going to go ahead and select that we want to import a solution up on the top here within the Solution section. Here's where the pop-up enablement is key. In fact, whenever you select this, you might be prompted here to enable pop-ups. And then after a moment or so, usually doesn't take this long, but after a moment or so, we're going to go ahead and select our files. There, we finally came back. So I'll select Choose File, and we're going to go navigate to wherever you selected or wherever you saved your class files. So again, you should have unzipped your class files to your C drive or your workstation somewhere. So ensuring that you have it unzipped is important here. So we're going to go ahead and select that we want to import the file here called Solution Power Virtual Agent in a Day. This is the file that we're going to select. It is another zip file within the zip file. So you're going to basically import the solution from a zip file here. All right, so I'll select Solution Power Virtual Agent in a Day from the class files and then hit Open. All right, you can see that solution is selected here. You'll then click Next, and then you'll select Next again, and then finally click Import. This might take, in some cases, usually it only takes a few seconds, but in some cases it could take up to 2 minutes. So be patient with it. If it doesn't immediately work for you, or if it looks like it's running a little slower than mine, be a little patient with it. But this is importing the solution, so it gives you a big head start into what we're going to be doing for the day. Now, once this completes, this actually gets our first task, which in our case is task number 3, already done. So we're starting on task number 3 while it's doing the import. I'm going to show you where we are in the context of the class here, where we actually worked through our way of importing the solution. So you just did several pages worth of results here. Our final thing that we're going to see here is we should see this here in a few moments. Once you see this screen, that means that you have successfully completed the import. Mine's still running there. It looks like it's almost done. And then we'll be off to our next task. So in the next section here, we're going to actually start working on bringing in together these solutions together in one single location. Okay? All right. So let's flip back over. Looks like mine is done. So we're going to go ahead and hit close on this. This just shows you that the import has completed. If you really wanted to look at the details of it, you could, but I'm going to go ahead and hit close. All right, so now with that done, you'll see a new solution that should have arrived here for you after the import completed called VA in a Day, for Virtual Agent in a Day, or Virtual Agents in a Day. All right, so what we're going to do is you're going to go ahead and select Virtual Agents in a Day. Go ahead and click on that. And if you're following along in the lab, this is now starting task number 4. And in task number 4, we're basically going to take the solution that's been provided to us and fix some connections that are in part of the solutions that are here. You'll notice that there are a couple things in here. There's 2 flows in here. There's a couple things within the common data services that have already been created for us. And so what we're going to do is we're going to basically enable these flows to make sure the connections are wired up properly. So what I want you to do, if you're following along, is select Get Order Info by Email. And this is going to launch Power Automate. And it might prompt you here to go ahead and sign up for a trial of Power Automate. If you have used the login that I provided, that's fine. Go ahead and hit Get Started. And once you do that, you will be brought into a screen that looks like this, where we're configuring this particular flow here. And so we're going to go ahead and click Edit on this flow. And, oh, I clicked the wrong edit. Sorry, I want you to click this edit up top here. Click this edit button on the top of the flow. And you'll notice you have this little warning sign on the connection. Now what we want to do is we want to correct that little warning. You'll notice that it's missing a connection. And the way to fix that is you're going to expand this here. So click on the actual connection option here. And we're going to add a new connection because it's basically not wired up to establish a connection into our CDS environment. So we're going to add a connection. And as you do this, make sure that the environment in the top right still says Dev Lab Admin. If it doesn't say Dev Lab Admin, you'll want to change the environment to make sure it's pointing to the right one. Okay? All right, so we're going to hit Add a new connection. And it's going to create this connection into our common data service, our version of it. All right. And then if you want, you can kind of go ahead and X out both of these options here. I'm going to click X next to the environment and X next to the entity just to make sure that it's picked the right one for us here. So we're going to go ahead and hit the down arrow after we click the X to remove the environment and make sure it's pointing to our Dev Lab Admin environment. Okay, like so. Then you're going to select the entity device orders. So you'll either start typing to find it. You might find that a little easier to type in dev and you'll find device orders. But you're going to select the device orders entity to use for this Power Automate flow. Now, I know we're doing some things here that aren't Power Virtual Agents yet, but the whole purpose of this is to kind of set you up for success for some of the things we're going to do later in the day. So go ahead and select the device orders entity and then hit Save. And that will save this Power Automate. Okay, and we're going to go, once it's finished saving, you can see it's still saving on the top left here. Once it's finished saving, you can go ahead and hit back. Hit the back button in the top there. And then the last thing we want to do before we move on is we want to turn on this flow. Okay, to turn on the flow, you'll just go up to the top here where it says turn on, and you'll hit the turn on button. Okay, so that's going to flip on the status here from being off to on. You should see it now say on within inside the details section here. All right, good. So we've got this one taken care of. You can go ahead and close this tab within inside your web browser. And then this will take you back. Hopefully you still have open the tab to your solution within inside of, this is Power Apps right now. And the next thing that we want to do is we want to do something very similar with the return item flow that we have. So we're going to go ahead and select the return item flow. And that's going to launch another browser tab for us again. And this time again, we're going into Power Automate. And we're going to edit this flow again to basically make the same correction we did a moment ago, where we're going to correct it so that it's pointing to a proper connection here. Okay? So to do that, you're going to click Edit in the top left, where my mouse is right now. And then once we do that, you'll see we have the same issue we had previously showing up underneath the connection section here. We'll go ahead and expand this. And we're going to point this into our connection that we've already defined. So we'll hit, actually, I think I can just select the connection that we've already defined there. Let's see if it worked for me. Yeah, it looked like it did. So tell you what, let me actually back out of this and come back into it just so I can show you what I did. I know I did it a little fast there. I'm going to launch the edit again. Just want to show you what I did. If you expand the connections on this again, you can see if you click your existing connection here, one that you've already defined previously, that will allow you to not have to define the connection a second time. So if I click on Lab Admin, in my case 100, yours might have a different name. I'll go ahead and select that. And then it will connect into my environment. Well, it's not connected to my environment yet, but it'll log me in essentially. And then I'm going to click the X on these two because it's pointing to a bad environment right now. So I'm going to go ahead and click X on this and click X on this. And then we're going to point the environment again to my dev lab admin one. Okay, so make sure you select the correct environment, like so. And then you're going to point it to, again, the device orders entity here.
Hey, can you review what the solution's doing?
Yeah, so the question was, what is the solution doing? Essentially, what the solution is doing here for us is it has a bunch of pre-created elements that don't have anything to do with the chatbot we're going to be creating. It doesn't have anything to do with chatbots that we'll be creating from scratch, but it's going to help us in the integration into other Power Platform pieces. So what this solution has in it is it has a Power App, it has a couple flows in it, and we're going to leverage those flows within inside of our Power Virtual Agents at a later point. So what the solution is doing here for you is it's helping you have these things set up in advance for some of the things that we're doing later. So just to be clear here, I know some of this is kind of setting up prerequisites. This isn't diving right into Power Virtual Agents right off the bat, but it's getting us to a point that we can integrate with these other tools later. All right, cool. So we've got the selection here. We've now pointed it to our environment. We've pointed it to the entity for device orders. So we've got that all set. The last thing that we'll go ahead and do is save this by hitting the save in the top right. Okay. So hit save, and then go ahead and go back into, once it finishes saving, there we go. Go back by hitting the back button on the top left here where it says return item. All right, and then the last step that we're going to do here is the same last step that we did in the previous one, is we're going to turn on this Power Automate flow. To turn on the flow, you'll hit turn on right here. Yeah, sure. So just a reminder, if you're struggling to keep up with some of these little steps here, make sure you remember you are in YouTube, so you can rewind to me. You can take a step back and get back where I was. If you want to see what I did a second time, you can hit the little rewind button into YouTube, and it'll allow you to kind of review something if you missed a step that I did. That'll allow you to catch up rather easily there. All right, so we've got the solutions, or the flows that are within that solution, turned on, wired up again so that we can use them. This again, in this first module, we're setting the stage for things that we're going to be doing later. And we're not diving super deep into Power Automate yet, mainly because we're going to kind of ease our way into it. And the first module of this class really focuses on how to get prepared for later. All right, so we've got this taken care of, so you can close the tab that we had open. Okay, and this will take you back to Power Automate, which you were already in. And our last thing that we're going to do is we're going to import a Power Apps app. We're going to import a Canvas app. So if you're following along within the labs itself, we're already down to page 35 in lab number 1. And what we're going to be doing within this lab is we're going to import an application that is part of the class files. So again, those class files you should have downloaded ahead of time. But we're going to go underneath the apps section here. So on the top left of Power Apps, okay, so if you're not seeing apps, you might not be in Power Apps, and you might need to make sure you're looking at make.powerapps.com here. But you'll go to Apps, and within inside Apps, we're going to import a Canvas app. And what we're going to be doing with this is a Canvas app where we're going to launch the app very briefly. We're going to do a small interaction within the app. And the reason we're doing this is to be able to log some data into the Common Data Service database. Basically, we want to have some predefined databases for some order information. So when we go start working with the Power Virtual Agent chatbot, it'll have some reference of some data where perhaps we have an order where we've attempted to make an order. All right, so we're going to select that we want to import Canvas app. And we're going to select that we want to upload a Canvas app. Again, we're going to be selecting a zip file that is in the class files, okay? And the zip file is called app Power Virtual Agent in a day. So go ahead and select upload here. And you're going to be selecting the file called app Power Virtual Agent in a day. Okay, so make sure you have that file selected when you click that. Slow down. And then hit open. Okay, so select app Power Virtual Agent a day. And again, these are coming from the class files. So make sure you go within the class files that we've downloaded and select App, Power Virtual Agent in a Day, and click Open. Once you do that, it'll take here a few moments to kind of recognize the file and recognize that it is a Power App and not just some random zip file that you have. And then once after it gets a few moments with it, sometimes it can take a few minutes. Once it's done with that, you'll see that your screen kind of updates to look like this. So it's actually recognized the app within the zip file. And your last step here is to import it. So in the bottom right, you'll see there's an import option. You're going to go ahead and select to import this Power App that you've selected. Okay, so go ahead and select import. And again, that'll take a few moments. But when your app has successfully imported, you'll see a little success symbol that will pop up. And again, the reason for a lot of these different elements is it is going to help us show how the Power Platform integrates in with all of the other Power Platform elements. So again, Power Platform has 4 different tools. The only one that we're not really touching today is Power BI. And you're still going to see a little bit of Power BI integration inside Power Virtual Agents because that's what's used for the dashboarding and analytics piece of Power Virtual Agents. You're not necessarily creating anything inside Power BI, but all of the other Power Platform tools will integrate in together very nicely here. All right, so it looks like my app has successfully imported. The way I can tell that is up on the top here. You'll see the little success sign here letting us know that we've imported that successfully. And so now the final real few steps that we have here is to generate some test data for our Power Virtual Agent. Now the way that we're going to do this is we're going to interact with this app that we just imported. So to do that, you're going to go over to the left-hand side and select Apps again. Okay, so go over to the left-hand side within inside Power Apps and select Apps. And then you're going to select the app here called Device Ordering App. And we're going to launch this very briefly. We're going to select something just to basically interact with the app to generate some data for us, and then we'll move on. All right, so we'll select Device Ordering App here. And after a few moments, it will launch the app. You will also likely have a prompt that will ask you to allow permissions when you open the app. You're going to go ahead and select to allow that. You should notice that it is, if you've logged in with our little test accounts or our demo accounts that we're using for today, you should notice that it actually is pointing to those demo accounts that we've set up for you. So you can see here that it's kind of requesting permission into the Common Data Service with the login that we have, our demo account, and then it's also trying to get a connection into the Office 365 user connector here as well. So once you see this pop up, you're just going to click Allow. And you're allowing you're allowing Power Apps to have connectivity into your Common Data Service. Once you've done that, it will launch the app. This is an app that's actually developed as part of App in a Day. So if you've ever taken any Power Apps training, specifically the App in a Day class, then you've likely seen this app before. This is actually a device ordering application where you can order an application for your users or maybe perhaps yourself. And you can use this to kind of compare multiple products together. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this to just generate some data that's going to be later leveraged within inside of Power Virtual Agents. So to do that, if you're following along, you're going to go ahead and select that we want to look at one of the devices. Let's just say the Aspire U here. We're going to select this one product. And then in the bottom right, you're going to select that you want to compare one item. It's just going to basically give you more details about that one item. So select the one item and then hit compare. This will then bring up kind of a detail screen or a submission screen where you can submit the ordering of this product. So this is the last step that we have with inside Power Apps. All you're going to do, there's actually 2 more clicks. All we're going to do is we're going to click Submit Device Request in the bottom right. And then once you do that, it's going to launch one more form for you. And all you have to do is it's going to say, hey, the device request has been successfully submitted. Click OK. So again, the point of what we're doing here is to set up and get some data ready for our later module. So once you hit OK, we are actually done with all the prerequisites. We're done with setting up Power Automate. We're done with Power Apps. So go ahead and click on OK on that device ordering app, and we're ready to move on. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to flip back. You can close Power Apps for now. You can even close your other one. I'm going to leave this one open for now, though. And we're going to flip back over to the slides to continue forward into our second module. All right, so this is, I know, and forgive me, I know there's a lot of steps there. A lot of that is really setting us up for success later. That's why the slide there actually said prerequisites and creating the environment. Believe it or not, starting on page 18 saved us about 45 minutes or an hour of predefined setup there. So there was a lot of help that I did ahead of time there, even though there was a lot of still setup that we had to do together. But what we're going to do now is, now that we've got the prerequisites done, we're going to walk through how you can build your first app. So this is really going to be focused now all on Power Virtual Agents and how do we get going with it and how do we start to begin building our own app here. So let's go ahead and jump in. So we've already talked about this, our agenda here. So when you go to begin with inside Power Virtual Agents, you will create a bot. So what you're creating with the unit of work with inside Power Virtual Agents is called a bot. And then within inside of those bots, you create topics. The topics that you create can be either user-defined topics that you actually create yourself, or there are system topics. Now, when you first initially create a bot, there are several user-defined topics that are created for you, and there's also several system topics that are created for you as well. So as we get into it here in a few moments, you're going to see that there's several basically template conversations so you can learn how to do Power Virtual Agents just by beginning to create a bot yourself. All right, so system topics are going to be things more like I'm going to end all of my conversations in a standard way, so I'm going to launch this into send people to a survey. Sending people to a survey is an example of a system topic that's been predefined for you. User ones are going to be all you. Now, when you go to create a topic, there's really this kind of process that you're going to do. So it's going to start by, of course, you define a bot. You're going to create new topics. Topics you can think of as a conversation that you're having with a user. So if a user logged into your chatbot and said, I need a refund, you would likely have a topic that is centered around refunding products. So refunding products could be the name of one of your topics. And then within inside of your topic, you'll have things called triggers, which we'll look at here shortly. And those triggers are going to be trigger phrases that your users would have to type in to initiate the topic interaction, okay? Now, they don't have to type in the exact words that you have as a trigger phrase. That's actually where part of the AI capabilities of Power Virtual Agents kicks in, is if they type in something similar or similar enough to a trigger phrase that you've entered, it will initiate the topic anyways. So the process here is that you'll create a topic. You'll then create this conversation tree where you have how the conversation will flow. You'll then test the conversation or test the bot, and then you'll publish the bot so that others can test it, as well as you can have it published to your website. And then you're going to look at the measurements and analytics to see how successful the bot has actually been. Once you've analyzed it and you've looked at the analytics within the bot and seen how successful it is at actually resolving problems, that's when you'll kind of go back through the cycle and you'll go through and revise your bot based on you seeing that the bot's not as successful as you would hope it would be. So you can go in and actually modify some of your topics to make it connect and resolve more problems. All right, so it's kind of a multiple cycles through the process here. All right, so to create a new chatbot, we'll go through these slides rather quickly because we're going to actually see it ourselves here in a moment. But to create your own chatbot, you're going to go to powervirtualagent.microsoft.com. We'll do that here in a moment. And then you're going to select that you want to create a new chatbot. Okay, now if you haven't gone to Power Virtual Agents before, you might be prompted to actually sign up for a trial as well. So we might see that here in a few moments. But it's very simple to get started. Then to actually to interact with it, you can see some of the system topics as well as the user topics that have been created for you ahead of time. I mentioned there's actually 4 user topics that were predefined for you that are really there to help you learn how to use Power Virtual Agents on your own. So you'll see those 4 topics available to you, and we'll actually leverage some of those topics to get started as well. And then the 8 system topics are more things like greetings, escalations, end of a conversation, different things that are kind of commonplace within chatbot conversations. Then we can look at the conversation trigger phrases. Now again, trigger phrases are what will be used to initiate a topic. So when a topic is not going to be initiated unless one of the trigger phrases is called upon. So if you look at the screenshot we have on the right-hand side, the topic is issues with your lawn. So maybe this is actually a company, in fact, you can see the name of the company. This is TrueGreen. They were one of the case studies for Microsoft with Power Virtual Agent. TrueGreen is a lawn care service that does like fertilizer and things like that. But you can see that one of their conversations or one of their topics was around issues with your lawn. So somebody would come in and have an issue with their lawn, and they would type in one of the trigger phrases that you see to the right. So these are the types of trigger phrases. I know it's a little blurry because it's a screenshot here. But if anyone typed in some of the kind of trigger phrases that you see here, then it would initiate the topic called issues with your lawn. Okay? And so we're going to see that experience here as we go through this as well. Now, again, the trigger phrases do not need to be exactly of what appear from your user. It does use the AI capabilities to parse whatever the user types in to trigger the topic anyways. All right, so once you have created the topic, you will then launch the authoring canvas. And the authoring canvas actually kind of has a look and feel of a little bit like Power Automate, in that it's a tree view. You're actually kind of working through this tree view where you can create this conversation tree on how you're going to be interacting with your customers. So you'll have the trigger phrases will be on the top, and then interactions like questions that you're going to ask customers or messages that you're going to send to your end users, your customers, will appear within inside the conversation tree from there. All right, then once you've created the conversation tree, you'll then actually test your bot. So you'll use the testing capability that's built in. There's actually a test bot option that when you select it, it allows you to not only test the bot for how it's going to interact from what you've created, but you'll also be able to see how it flows within your topic. You can see in the middle part of your screen or the right-hand part of your screen, you'll be able to see at what point is it within your conversation tree, and this kind of guides you and helps you understand how successful your conversations will actually be because you can test it within the testing capability. Once you have tested it and you feel pretty confident about it, you can publish it to a demo site. And this is pretty easy to do. The purpose of the demo site, though, is so that you can pass your chatbot around to other colleagues prior to actually putting it on your website or your team site or whatever integration you want. The demo website allows you to hand around the Power Virtual Agents that you've created, the bot that you've created, to others to test out, to interact with, to give you feedback without it being public to the whole world on your website. So the demo site is a great way to be able to test outside of yourself. I mentioned the testing capability that we had here is more for your own purposes. As you're developing the solution, you can test it. But then the demo site is more for other users within your other colleagues, basically, to test out the site for you as well. All right, so this is just kind of a little summary of what we've done. This actually gets into talking about some of the analytics that we'll be able to look at over time as well. We'll be able to look at things like the abandon rate, how many people started a chat with our chatbot but didn't actually finish it, how many escalations did we have, how many resolutions did we have. All of these things will be really important as we finalize our chatbot and start to make enhancements to it over time. Okay. All right, so just a summary. We talked about Power Virtual Agents being part of the Power Platform. It's built on top of the Common Data Service. That's why we had to have that environment inside a CDS environment ready to go. And it also offers this really nice graphical interface that we're about to see here in a few moments for creating our solution. All right. So we are ready to jump into lab number 2. And in lab number 2, we're going to begin actually building our first chatbot. Okay. So again, if you're following along in the class files, you would want to have open lab number 2, build your first chatbot. And this one we're going to start at from the beginning. So if you're following along there, no issues, just beginning at the very top of it, and we're going to work our way through it together. All right, so lab number 2 here, and I'm going to go ahead and close my presentation deck here and bring back open my web browser. Because what we're going to be doing in this lab, which, by the way, the first steps here start on page 2. But the use case of this one is that you work for a retail company called Contoso. So Contoso is a company that Microsoft uses a lot as the sample retail company. And the Contoso retail company is having a lot of success. And their customer base has grown quite a bit. And what we'd like to do is we want to make it so that our customer support can scale much better than it can right now. The live chat capabilities where we have with live chat customer service representatives is being overwhelmed. And so we want to see if we're able to help some of our customers through our chatbot capability and Power Virtual Agents, so that way that a lot of this can be automated rather than always having to have dozens of people handle interactions. So to do this, we're going to actually have, and we're put in charge of creating a chatbot as the subject matter expert in customer service for Contoso. Again, we do not have to be someone that's in IT. We can be this kind of citizen developer to develop our own solution here so that others can interact with it, okay? So to do that, we're going to, again, get started by building our own virtual agents. And so we're going to do this by going to our web browser, and you can open up a new tab if you want, or you can actually leave Power Apps. We're not going to be in Power Apps anymore. And we're going to go instead to Power VA, that's Power Virtual Agents, .microsoft.com. Okay, so take a moment in your web browser, go to powerva.microsoft.com. And once you go there, it will prompt you to sign in. Now remember, if you're following along, I recommend you signing in with the account that I shared with you that has a lot of this pre-configured common data service capabilities that we just wired up a few moments ago to the flows. All of that is done hopefully within that account that we shared with you. Now, because it's the first time that I'm logging in with this account using Power Virtual Agents, it is prompting me to sign up for a trial. And what this tells you, by the way, is that it recognizes that my login is I'm still signed in based on what I signed in with inside Power Virtual Agents, but you may be prompted to sign in again. There's a chance that you may be prompted to sign in again. And if you are, then you're going to sign in with the account that I provided you. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit Start Free Trial. So we're going to start a trial of Power Virtual Agents on the demo accounts that were provided to you. And then we're going to create our first bot. So the bot we're going to call, really you can call it whatever you want. Call it your company name. I'm going to call mine Pragmatic Works Customer Service. But you can call yours whatever you want. If you're like the case study of True Green, you can put True Green Customer Service if you want. Just whatever you'd like to name it. All right, so you're going to name the bot, and then you're going to tell it what language should the bot be in. And in our case, I'm going to do English throughout the course here. So I'm going to make sure I select English here as well. Right there, English US. And then this part is very key. Hopefully you didn't rush through this ahead of me, because you want to make sure that the environment that you select is not the default one. You're actually going to switch this to the dev lab admin environment. So make sure, we did a lot of work to set up that environment so that it's ready for what we're about to do now. So make sure you switch this to use the dev lab admin environment, because that's where we have our flow integration, that's where we have our data stored. So having the right environment selected is very important. I will show you, if you accidentally selected the wrong environment and hit create, I will show you where you can go delete this bot and recreate it. I'll show you where you can do that. So you'll go ahead and hit create once you have the name, the language, and the environment selected, and then hit create. This will take just a few moments here to create the bot. But once we have done that, we're ready to move on to task number 2 within the lab. And task number 2 is we're basically going to get a little review of the different elements that we have within inside of Power Virtual Agents. All right. So this will take a few moments here to load. There it goes. And you could get a little, you could explore some of the documentation here if you wanted. In my case here, I'm just going to tell it that I want to explore the bot so we can go ahead and get started with it. So I'll hit Explore Bot. Now, I mentioned a few moments ago, you can actually see up in the top here, it's still creating the bot, but we can explore it for a little bit right now. There's some different elements that are still getting added to the bot itself. But I mentioned earlier, if you had accidentally selected the wrong environment and you needed to recreate the bot, you can do that by going up to the top little bot icon right here. And this is essentially, you don't need to do this if you feel like you did everything correctly, but if you accidentally selected the wrong environment or you don't like the name you created for it, you can come up to here where it says New Bot or Add a New Bot under the bot panel, and you can add a new bot. Now the reason why it's not allowing me to do this yet is because it's still kind of creating the bot that we have here, but once it's done creating the bot, and you refresh your screen, so I might just need to do a little screen refresh here. Once you do that and the bot's finished being created, looks like it's still working on it right now, you'll then see the ability to create a new bot. So this one has to finish before we have the ability to do that. So don't worry, it'll be done here shortly, and then we'll be able to do that if you needed to. So you'll select New Bot. That's only if you feel like you made a mistake on the previous screen where we were selecting the environment. The environment, again, pretty important. You want to use that dev lab admin one. Okay, So while we're waiting for this thing to finish assembling all the files that are necessary, let's do a quick little tour of the different areas that we have on our screen. So if we focus our attention on the left-hand side, you'll see there are several different nodes here that you can select from and interact with. In fact, before I go too deep into this, let me even expand oh, I can't do it yet until this is finished assembling. Let me just zoom in on it like this for now. So a couple things here. Under the home screen, you'll find things like the documentation, you'll find the support community, you'll find an ideas forum if you want to submit ideas for how Power Virtual Agent, what additionally you'd like to see it do. Basically, the home screen is a bunch of shortcuts to all kinds of different things that you'll need, where you can create other topics, where you can hit the publish button, where you can look at analytics. It's a little realm here where you can find all the shortcuts to those items. Below that, you'll find topics, and this is probably where you'll spend the majority of your time, is in the topics area. This is where you'll create those new topics, like we saw on the slides earlier, where let's say, for example, I'm having issues with my lawn. I would create a new topic to be able to handle that scenario, and this is where I can manage topics, where I can edit topics, where I can delete topics, where I can create new topics. I can also find suggested topics here, so we'll learn about suggested topics later on. So there's a lot of things that you have within the topics area, and you'll spend, like I said, the majority of your time in that realm. The next one here is entities. Now, entities are going to be where you can create entities that can be leveraged inside Power Virtual Agents. And basically, these are a way where you can preload different options that your users can select. So imagine that you are working for Pragmatic Works customer service here, and you sell hardware. You sell things like various devices, like Samsung devices, Acers, you have Microsoft devices, all the above. And you want to make it so that whenever a user comes in to type in and say they're having an issue with their device, you want to be able to ask them, what device do you have? And if they type in Samsung Series 7, you want to have an entity that has a list of devices to be able to make sure you understand the device they're talking about. Because if they just type in the text and you don't know what that device reference means, then it can be a little, you can basically veer your chat in different areas based on the entity selection. So entities you'll learn a little bit more about later, but this is where you can kind of predefine possible values that your users might type in. This is also where you can create things like synonyms. So I can have, if a user types in Samsung Series 7, I can have a synonym for that is Samsung. So Samsung can just pick that up based on that. I don't even have to create a synonym for that. It's smart enough to detect that there's some smart matching with Samsung Series 7 and just the word Samsung. So some really cool stuff that you can do there. The next one that we have is analytics. This is where you'll also spend some time, once you feel like you've got the bot fairly well designed, you'll then test it out a lot and then use the analytics to be able to verify that it's doing what you think it should be doing. And this will provide various metrics about things like resolutions and escalations and all kinds of stuff that tells you about how well your bot is actually serving your customers. So there's a lot of good information that you'll find there. Next, you'll find publish. Publish allows you to, as the name implies, publish it so that you can actually leverage it in your various channels, or if you're just even trying to test it within inside the demo site, you'll use the publish option here to be able to hand this off to your other users. And then within inside the manage section, looks like my bot is finally created now, by the way. You can see I can now expand this. Within the manage section, you have the ability to define which channels your bot's going to be available to, if you have any additional authentication to APIs, additional APIs that you want your users to be able to authenticate with inside the chat itself. So imagine that you have a chat that is enabled within inside of Teams, Microsoft Teams, and you want it to tap into something like your Salesforce. Well, Salesforce is obviously a whole nother product that's not Microsoft, and then you have Microsoft Teams here, and these are typically very siloed from each other. What you can do, however, is you can create within inside the chatbot itself where a user can type in their username and password and authenticate to these other subsystems like Salesforce and still have a conversation and get information from Salesforce back into Microsoft Teams through chat. So there's some interesting capability that you can do through authentication here. And then the last one that I'll mention here is the skills. This is really where you would rely on a developer. This is kind of like I mentioned Alexa skills earlier. This is where you can rely on a developer to create your own custom skills that tap into various APIs that you have that you want to be able to integrate into your chatbot. So some interesting capability that's all underneath the manage section there. All right. Now, I mentioned earlier my chatbot was still being created, and because the bot was still under creation, I wasn't actually able to go to the new bot option here. But now that it's done creating, I can go under bot panels, and you can see I can create a new bot. Once I have a new bot, I can also delete the old ones. So you have some ability here to kind of switch things up if you needed to. Okay? All right. Good deal. So just to give you, we're about an hour and 5 minutes in right now. Just to give you a little time frame here, what we'll probably do is finish this lab. So we'll go probably maybe an hour and a half or so and then take our break. So another 20 minutes or so, we'll take our first break. So if you're kind of looking at the clock here, wondering when we're going to do that, we're going to finish this lab number 2, and then we'll take our first break of the day, or really our probably only break of the day. So we'll go ahead and get going through this lab. So exercise number 2 within this lab is we just want to kind of interact with this and show how the bot works. So there are several pre-built topics that have been created for us. And you can see that you have the ability to test these topics in the bottom left. So look in the bottom left, you'll see this option here where you can actually test your bot. So if I were to click on test your bot down here, this will expand the test screen for me. And another key thing that I highly recommend that you do when you're testing your bot is to turn on this option here called track between topics. What that will do is it will actually show you the conversation tree that the testing is going through. So it'll show you a tree of a conversation, and it'll show you the path at which your users took. So if we wanted to test this out, I would turn on track between topics, and then we can come down to the bottom where it says type a message, and we can just type something like hello. If you type hello and hit enter or hit send, that will then allow your chatbot to engage. And because we have this track between topics turned on, you can actually see on the right-hand side the conversation tree and the path that we took. So because we said hello, it hit one of the trigger phrases right here. This is a system topic, by the way. It hit this trigger phrase, and then it initiated a message. It says, hi, I'm a virtual agent. And then it kind of goes through the interaction that you would have with that particular topic here. So it asks, how can it help us? And you could, if you wanted to, you could ask something more specific. I could say something like stores near me. And so if I want to know information about where the local stores that are near me, if I'm looking for a physical brick and mortar store, I can hit stores or type in stores near me and hit send. And this will actually switch to an entirely different topic. This time the topic is called Lesson 2, a simple topic with conditions and variables. And you can see that it hit this trigger phrase here that initiated this topic. So one of the things that's interesting here is Power Virtual Agents can skip between various topics. So if you started with hello, it would initiate a system topic. But then if I said something like stores near me, it's going to initiate a user topic. In this case, it's a user pre-built topic for me that allows me to transition into learning more about where to find my stores. And now that I've done that, you'll see here within the chatbot itself, it says, I'd be glad to help you to find a store near you. Which location are you interested in? And you'll see there's several predefined topics here that we can choose from. And you can actually click on whichever one of the topics, or I should say whichever one of the stores that are near you that you want to test out. So if I were to select something like Redmond or Seattle, whatever, if I select one of those, it's going to provide me more information about that particular store. And you can see with the track between topics turned on, it will show you the method of how it got to where it's at. And if I say, did you answer my question? Yes, it'll take me down this condition path on the left-hand side. Now that's a lot of steps. There's a lot of things going on here, right? And all this has kind of been pre-built for you. So let's actually take some time now and show you how you could get started with this yourself. Right now, all I'm doing is I'm showing you stuff that's already been pre-built for us. These are some user topics that were defined for us ahead of time. But now let's shift gears a little bit and actually show you how you can play around with the interface within Power Virtual Agents and either modify an existing topic or even how you could build your own eventually. All right, so let's switch back here. So what I want to do is I want you to follow me along and go over to the section here that says Topics. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go to the Topics node on the left-hand side here. And inside the Topics area, we're going to make a copy of an existing topic that we already have. So you'll find that there's a list of user-defined topics right here. There's also a list of system topics. These user-defined topics are, again, they're put here to help you learn how to use Power Virtual Agents. They're not ones that I actually did myself. Power Virtual Agents puts this here for you so you can learn how to use the tool. A great way to learn how to use the tool is actually to play around with these. So if I wanted to learn how to use Power Virtual Agents, I might make a copy of one of these. So for instance, find lesson number 2, a simple topic with a condition and a variable. Don't actually click it, but instead hover above it and then click More Actions. And with More Actions selected, go ahead and select that you want to make a copy of this topic. Okay, so all we're going to do is make a copy of it, and then we're going to make it our own. So go ahead and select Make a Copy. And when you do, it'll take a few moments. So you'll see it's copying the topic up at the top. It actually has a little status bar to tell you how things are going. But it created the topic, and you can now see we have 2 of them in here called Lesson 2. Okay? And you can hover above it. If you hover above it, you can actually see which one of them is the copy. It'll tell you copy at the end of the text there when you hover above it. But you can also tell which one is the copy because the copy is going to be turned off by default. And you can go ahead and leave it off for now. We'll change that a little bit later once we get working with it a little bit more. All right, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to select the one that we just made a copy of. That would be this one here on the top that's turned off. Go ahead and select it, hit the text. All right. And when you select the text for the topic, it'll take you into the topic setup. So within the topic setup screen here, you can rename the topic if you wanted to. So that'll be actually our first step. We're going to rename this topic. So where it says name here in the top left, go ahead and rename this. And let's call this something like Get Store Locations instead of Lesson 2. And then you'll also see things like a description. The descriptions are rather helpful as well. I recommend that you use the descriptions when you're trying to define what this topic's going to be doing. So especially if you're not going to be the only one working on the solution, it's really helpful to provide in-depth descriptions of what this topic is showing and what it's doing. So that way, if someone else is kind of picking up after you or are editing things that you've already worked on, then that way they know exactly what this topic is doing. So I certainly recommend adding a description. The other thing you'll find here is trigger phrases. And we've talked about trigger phrases a little bit now, but you'll notice that it recommends that you have at least 5 to 10 diverse phrases. When it says diverse phrases, that means don't have a bunch of phrases that are basically the same thing, just slightly reworded. You should have different phrases that would still go down the same topic, or you would like to go down the same topic, but are different enough that Power Virtual Agents won't be confused on which one to use, even though they're going to the same topic in this case. So you're going to see how to create trigger phrases later, but you'll note here that this one already has several trigger phrases pre-created for us. And what this means is if a user types in something around like stores near me or store locations, it's going to find one of these trigger phrases to initiate the conversation based on the similarity that what the user typed to the actual trigger phrases. So they don't have to type this exactly, but they need to type in something somewhat similar to what you see in the trigger phrases for this topic to be kicked off. All right, so after we change the name, let's go ahead and save this topic. You can find the ability to save the topic in the top right here. So go ahead and click on Save Topic once you've changed the name. And then we're going to go ahead and launch the authoring canvas. And so you'll find the authoring canvas button right here. So go ahead and select the authoring canvas to launch it. Okay, again, just a reminder, I know there's going to be a lot of clicks here, so if you ever need to rewind, use the YouTube capabilities, the YouTube live stream here capabilities, and you can rewind to see what I did a second time if you need to. Okay, all right, so each of these boxes that you see are called nodes. Okay, so you'll hear me use the word node, N-O-D-E, quite a bit. There's a bunch of nodes in here. We have a trigger phrase node, which you cannot edit here. Trigger phrases are only edited on the setup screen we were looking at just a moment ago. But then you'll see a message node, you'll see some question nodes, and then you'll also see some condition nodes in here. So these nodes are really what are doing the work behind Power Virtual Agents. So you'll be able to add various nodes in yourself, but these nodes are what are going to be used for the conversation and how it's going to work through the conversation. So let's take a look at one of these nodes. You'll see there's a message node that says, hey, I'd be glad to help find the stores near you, and then it initiates a question. Which location are you interested in? So the question node here will be a pop-up to your users, and it will ask them, which location are you interested in? And then you'll see here that it has a multiple options list for your users. So if you only have 3 locations, then you, rather than them typing in the locations, you can actually provide buttons for them to click. So they can select Redmond, Seattle, or Kirkland for the various locations that we have available to them to make life a little easier rather than them having to type them. What we're going to do is we just opened up a new store location. So we opened up a new store, so we need to add in a new location to make sure that that store is now listed as one of the options for our users. To add in a new option here, you would go find the question node and then go down to where it says new option. Okay, so find new option here on your screen within the question node and then go ahead and hit new option. Okay, and we're going to provide a new option for our users. We're also going to note, and you should take a look at this, if I scroll down a little bit, you'll also note here that there are various conditions that are hit here. And right now, a new condition was added. We had 3 conditions earlier. Now we had a 4th condition added because I added in another option for my users to select. So when I added in this new option, it added in a new condition. All right, so what we're going to do is we're now going to tell it, well, what is our new store? We're going to type in right here where it says enter option, we're going to type in Bellevue. Now make sure you're typing this in. This is Bellevue, Washington, by the way. Make sure you type Bellevue in to the question node and not the condition node. The reason for that is you'll notice the condition node automatically gets populated with whatever you type above. So as I'm typing it there, you'll notice that it automatically fills it in into the condition node for us automatically. So you don't have to do anything special for that. All right, so we've now added in a new store location for our users that they can select. Now we also have a new condition here as well. So with the new condition, we need to define what's going to happen if they select Bellevue. We already have conditions for Seattle, Kirkland, and Redmond. We now need to add in what happens if they select or type Bellevue. By the way, even though it provides buttons, they could also type these values as well. And now one thing I would think also might come up is, as a question you may have, is what if they type in something completely different than these 4 options? Then you could actually add in a 5th condition. So I could add in right here another, don't actually do this, I'm just showing you a what if scenario here. You could add in another condition here that would handle all other scenarios if they typed in something other than the 4 stores that we provided them, because they could actually type in something rather than selecting it. All right, so we have our Bellevue scenario here on the far right. And what we're going to do is we're going to add in a new message below Bellevue here. So you'll hit the little plus sign to add a new node below the condition. And we're going to select that we want to add a message or show a message. Now this is where it would be really helpful to have the labs open to copy and paste, because I don't want you guys to have to type this in, but if you have the labs open, and I've been kind of following along on my screen here as well, you're going to copy and paste in this section or this message right here where it says our Bellevue store is in 123 Bellevue Way, Bellevue, Washington, 98123. You could type this, or you can just copy and paste it out and paste it into our chatbot. That's why I kind of recommend you keep the lab open at least somewhere on your screen so that way you can find this and not have to type it all. So that was on, by the way, if you're looking in the lab, that was on page 12. Page 12, you're going to copy and paste out that section of text into the message node here. Now what you're going to learn about later is how you can actually make some of these things dynamic. You'll see there's variables used over here that are used in some of our other conditions. We're going to learn about that a little bit later, but for now, we're going to go ahead and hard code in Bellevue. All right, good deal. So to wrap this one up, our final step here is we're going to take this last message that we have and send it to this end of conversation node that we have at the very bottom of our conversation tree. This is a system topic that initiates things like surveys, and it basically ends the conversation and allows you to either escalate to a live user or send it to a survey to see how happy the users are with the chatbot itself. So if I were to take here's how you do this. This interaction is a little funky, so I'm going to do this kind of slow. If I want to wire up this message to the end of conversation at the end here, I'm going to zoom in on this so you can see it real closely, and you're going to hit the plus sign, but you're not going to select anything below. Instead, you're going to click and drag this little pink or purple dot here, and you're going to drag this on top of the pink or purple dot over here. Okay? I'm going to do this another time here just so you can see it again. You're going to click the plus sign, you see the little pink dot, you're going to drag that pink dot on top of the end of conversation over here. And basically it merges this with all the other end of conversations that are similar. The reason for this is you really don't need to have 4 separate end of conversations when really every conversation is going to end in a very similar way, where perhaps I want to send them to a survey or I want to escalate it to a live customer representative. So if you don't need to basically repeat the same end to every conversation, you can merge those 4 threads together into a single one at the end. Okay, so that's kind of the purpose of that. Okay, good deal. So we're almost done with this. Now, there's a few things that I want you to look at here. If you're struggling to see some of that interaction I showed you a moment ago, so a moment ago I kind of clicked on this plus sign and I dragged the note. If you're struggling to see that, one thing I would recommend is you'll find over on the left side here, you have a little zoom in or a zoom out button. You may need to zoom out some to be able to see that little interaction that we had here. So pay close attention. You have the zoom in and zoom out here that allow you to zoom out to perhaps see those little nodes and those little dots a little better, because it can be a little difficult to see those little pink dots if you're not looking right. All right, good deal. So now that we've kind of wired all of these different elements up, we are just about done. We're going to go ahead and save this. So you're going to go up to the top here and hit save. So make sure you save what we've done so far. Okay, and that'll take a few moments to save. And with it saved, we are now going to test it out. So to test it, we of course need to turn it on. So let's do this. We're going to select topics again. So come back over here on the left-hand side, because right now this topic that we're looking at is still turned off. We need to turn it on. So come back over to topics on the left-hand side now that we've saved that one. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn off lesson 2, because lesson 2 is the one that we started off with, that we made a copy of when we modified it. So we're going to turn off lesson 2, and that might take us a few moments to turn off. You can see it's turning it off up here. There it goes. It just turned off. It just takes a few moments after you click that little toggle to turn it off. And then we're going to turn on get store locations. So flip on the little toggle next to status. Again, how did I get here, just in case you're curious? I flipped on topics on the left-hand side to get back here. Okay? But basically, we turned off lesson 2, we turned on get store locations, so that way we can now test it and make sure it's working like we think it should be working. And once we get done with testing it, we'll go ahead and take our break. All right, so we're going to go over to hit the test bot option in the bottom left. If you haven't already clicked it, you may still have it turned on, but if for some reason you turned it off, maybe go ahead and click on test your bot, and it will say hide bot if you already have it turned on. So I'm going to turn this on again, and then make sure you have track between topics turned on again. Sometimes it turns off. Make sure you have it turned on, so as we're testing this topic, it's ready to go. All right, so in the bottom, we're going to ask, is there a store near me? Okay, so where it says type your message, we're going to type in, is there a store near me? And hit enter or hit send. And when we do that, if you have track topics or track between topics turned on, you'll see that even though we didn't type the exact trigger phrases that are up here, I typed in, is there a store near me? So kind of a combination of a couple of these, it was still able to detect that get stores, that this topic should be initiated based on the trigger phrases that we typed in, even though we didn't do it exactly the way it appears here. So the AI capabilities are able to capture and figure out what we're trying to say. And so when it initiates this topic, it asks me, it says, I'm glad to help find a store near you. That's this message here. Then it says, which location are you interested in? So that's from our question node. And you'll notice that we have 4 options, and it does scroll off the screen a little bit, so let me zoom in on this for a moment for you. You may have to hover above and use the little scroll bar here to leverage the new one that we just created here called Bellevue. So I'm going to go ahead and select the new one that we created called Bellevue. And we're telling it that we're interested in learning about Bellevue, and so it gives us that message that we created that tells us the location for our Bellevue store, and then it says, did that answer your question? Okay, so what happened here is it finished one topic. It finished the topic that's all around get store locations, and then because we told it at the very end of that topic to transition into end of conversation, that was the system topic here, you'll notice it's now switched to an entirely new topic here focused on ending a conversation, trying to get a survey, and we can say here, did that answer your question? I can say yes, and then that'll kind of flow through this system topic here where we can provide a survey and tell it how much did we rate our experience here. Were we happy with it or not? You can kind of rate your experience there. So those are more kind of system topics at the end that are just designed to kind of wrap up a conversation, to wrap up an interaction that you had within the customer tree. I thought we were done. There's actually one small thing that we have, and that's okay. I wanted to end around 12:30 Eastern time here. So there's one more small thing that we're going to do together, which is to publish this bot that we've created so far. So one small thing, this is really only a handful of steps here. To publish your bot, let's flip back over. We're going to go to the Publish tab, which you'll find over here on the left-hand side in the navigation. So we're going to select that we want to publish our bot, and then you'll click Publish. So let me close the test bot area here. You're going to go to the Publish tab right here, and then you're going to click Publish. Okay? Once you click Publish, and then Publish again for the third time, it's going to publish your bot and make it so that that bot is now available between various channels or even the demo website. So the demo website, I don't know if you remember from the slides earlier, I mentioned the demo website is used for sending to your other colleagues. Maybe they don't necessarily have a Power Virtual Agent login, but you want them to be able to test it out and give you feedback. That's what this demo site is for right here. So if you select that demo site, that will actually open a new tab for you. And it will give you the ability to interact with your virtual agent from within inside of this demo little site. So you can share this site with your colleagues, and then they can come in and start interacting with it. And the same interaction that you had a few moments ago, you now have within this demo site, and I can say stores near me, and it will produce that same interaction that we had before, but now within inside this nice little demo site that you can hand off to people. So that's the purpose of the demo site, just for testing. This is not something that you'll necessarily send your users to. You would not send them to the demo site here. You would do some integration in with various channels, which we'll talk about later. But let's go ahead and take a rather short break. Again, we have a pretty full day, so we're going to take a very short break, just enough time to give you a little bio break here. We'll take a 5-minute break, and we'll come back after that and move on to Module 3. All right, so we'll see you guys in 5 minutes. Make sure you can hear me too. All right, welcome back, everyone. So I know that's a lot of stuff all at once here for getting to know Power Virtual Agent. I did see some feedback in the live stream about kind of understanding the business problem a little bit more. I know I'm going more through like the function of how to, less of the why. So let's take a step back here for a moment and talk about that. Before we do that, I do want to inform you a little bit about Pragmatic Works. So you might be new to Pragmatic Works, you might not be as familiar with what we do. We do a lot of Power Platform, Azure, SQL Server, all kinds of BI training. And so I do want to kind of fill you in a little bit on what we offer. So if you bear with me here for a moment to bug you with that, we do a lot of live training where we actually, previously we would come on site, that we obviously do more virtual now. We do things from like one-day workshops to week-long boot camps. We also have on-demand learning that has 60 different courses that are built into it. Those 60 courses have Power Platform, Azure, Power BI, Power Automate, Power Apps, and even the class you're sitting in now is also recorded on there in full. So if for some reason we're not able to finish today and do everything today, you can capture the recorded version of this class, the pre-recorded version that covers everything, on our on-demand learning. And we actually have that on-demand learning for Dashboard in a Day, App in a Day, and Power Virtual Agents in a Day are free forever. So you'll see, I'm going to show you where you can sign up and do a trial of it here in a few moments, and Matt will likely share it in the chat with you as well. But that is free for you forever to be able to explore those three classes, Dashboard in a Day, App in a Day, and Power Virtual Agents in a Day. We also have classes for purchase. So if you're interested in looking at some of our additional training that go more in depth than our free training, you can certainly look at that as well. And then finally, the last piece here is our hackathons. Our hackathons are really designed to allow you to take what you learn in one of our training classes and apply it to your data. So if you're really interested in learning more about Power Virtual Agents, but you want to apply it to your scenarios and your business, we can do that through a hackathon. Or if you're interested in learning more about Power BI or Power Apps and how can I do it within our ecosystem, that's what hackathons are designed to do. Is it's kind of one part training, one part learn how to build it on our prototype is kind of the end result of that. So it's not for production use, but it is for kind of building out prototypes so that you can eventually get something to production. We're all about kind of teach a man to fish, teach you how to fish and do it yourself. The last thing that we do is we also offer mentoring. I don't have it on the slide here, but if you're interested in having some one-on-one mentoring, we can certainly help you with that as well. And this is kind of a big list of just some of the classes. This isn't even all 60 of the courses, but this does give you a little bit of a peek at the type of courses that we do offer. All right, so what I'd like to do is guide you briefly here to where you can find, and you may want to pause in the video to get this link, and Matt will share this likely in the chat as well. But this link that I have on the screen right now is to where you can sign up for a trial of our on-demand learning. Now, when you sign up for a trial, you'll notice it will say a 7-day free trial. That's 7 days to our paid training. But the Power Virtual Agents class is free forever. It never expires. You can log in 2 years from now and still look at it. In fact, we even update the course periodically to make sure that you're looking at the most up-to-date version of not only the class, but also the technology. So if you go to this link that I have on the screen now, you can pause the video and snag it, and Matt will post it in the chat for you as well. When you go to that link, it will be a quick form here for you to give us a little information about you, but you'll notice here that it is no credit card required. It is 60 classes are available for 7 days, but then you have lifetime access to Dashboard in a Day, App in a Day, and Power Virtual Agents in a Day. So fill out the form. That will give you access to those classes long-term forever. So great opportunity there for you, and it gets you more in-depth into not only Power Virtual Agents, but some of the other Power Platform technologies. All right, good deal. The other thing that I wanted to mention, and you will actually get a link to this via email if you signed up for our event in advance. But the last thing I want to mention before we start back is the cookbook. So you have a link here, and this has been posted in the chat, the live chat several times as well. But the cookbook is what allows you to kind of make a use case for virtual agents in general, or make a use case for chatbots in general with your organization. So if you're trying to make that use case for your business, why do we need this? The Chatbot cookbook is a great method for understanding that. So you can, if you go to that, you'll actually have this emailed to you as well. So you don't necessarily have to worry about grabbing this right away. We will email this to you if you signed up for the event. But if you didn't and you're watching this later, take a look at this link, and there's a short form for that as well. But once you fill out the form, that will allow you to have this great cookbook that we've made. It's about 15 pages that talks about the benefits and use cases of chatbots and how you might be able to use them in your environments as well. All right, so speaking of which, speaking of how you would use them in your environment, let's talk a little bit more about the business case of what we've done so far. So far, a lot of what we've done has been taking and kind of picking up from where we left off in other pre-existing topics. So the use case here is I'm a customer, I'm gonna embed this in my website, or from a business perspective, I'm gonna embed this on my website so that customers can come to my website. We're Pragmatic Works, let's say hardware, and we sell physical devices like phones like this, and we sell other laptops and things like that. And we wanna make it so that when our customers have a scenario where they need to ask a question, that we're not overwhelming our live chat. We're not overwhelming our customer service representatives with dozens and dozens of chats. When a chatbot can oftentimes solve a lot of those problems for our users. And so when our customers come to sign into our website, we want to give them the ability to interact with our Power Virtual Agent that has a lot of the answers predefined. And again, for the business scenario, I could have someone that's part of my customer service department actually define the flow in the conversation tree that we were looking at earlier. And of course, it's going to require some training. If you just hand this off to someone within your customer service department, they could be rather overwhelmed a little bit at first. But it's really designed for them. It's all GUI driven. You'll see I haven't written any code, and it allows them to be able to define, because they're the subject matter expert, how the conversation will flow. So that's one of the huge benefits here with Power Virtual Agents over other bots, is this allows you to have your subject matter experts be the one that actually defines how the conversation is going to flow, because they're the experts on how they would answer it as a customer service representative to begin with. So this would pop up on my website. It would allow my users to ask things like, what if I need to return a product? What if I need to find your nearest store? And we would be building out these topics to be able to interact with those interactions that our customers have. Okay? All right, so hopefully that helps set the business case a little bit better than what I had done previously. All right, so we're going to flip back over to our slides for a few moments, and we're starting on Module 3, which is where we're going to be. This is actually a rather quick one. This is where we're going to be looking at creating bots from existing pages. This is actually a really fun part of Power Virtual Agents, because what this is going to allow you to do is point to a website that has a bunch of key information already, like an FAQ page, a frequently asked question page, and be able to point Power Virtual Agents to that FAQ page, and it automatically create several suggested topics for you based on that page. And this is a rather quick one to show, but it's a really fun one. So let's go ahead and actually get a little bit more info into this. So if we wanted to use this option to create suggested topics, all you simply have to do is point Power Virtual Agents to a web page. It does need to be a secure page, meaning it needs to be an HTTPS page. It needs to have that secureness to it. And within like a single click, it will create multiple topics for you, and you can pick and choose which topics make sense for you. In some cases, it might make a topic that is not relevant, because it's kind of scanning the page and trying to detect what things are potentially relevant to a conversation that your customers are going to have. So we're not going to cover a lot of slides there. We're going to jump right into actually creating a new topic based off of a web page. Now this, if you're following along, is now Module 3, Topic Suggestion, and this one's going to be a really quick one. It's not really a very in-depth module because it does a lot of the work for you. But you want to make sure you have lab number 3, Topic Suggestions, open for this example. All right, I'm going to get it open on my screen here as well. So I'm following along with you. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to begin by launching open Power Virtual Agents again. So I'm going to go back to my web browser, like so. And it looks like, oh, here we go. I already have it open. Let's go to the right one here. All right, so we had finished publishing our virtual agent that we had created before. Now we're going to actually make some additional enhancements and actually create some new topics. So we're going to go up to topics where we were previously. So select topics here again. Okay. And within inside topics, we're going to create some suggested topics. So you'll find in the top left, right next to where you would normally create a new topic, you can now create a suggested topic. So go ahead and select Suggest Topics. Okay? Now when you do this, it's going to prompt you to provide a web page for where the suggested topics can be found. This can be a frequently asked question page. That's a very common use case for it. In fact, the labs, if you're following along on the labs, on page number 2, have a link right here to an FAQ page that you can use for this example. And so Matt, if you could, go ahead and paste this in the chat so people can copy and paste it in case they don't have it in their chat. Sorry, if they don't have the labs open. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to and open this page. And this is what it looks like. So this is a frequently asked question page. It looks very similar to a frequently asked questions page that you would find on any company's website. But what we're going to do is we're going to leverage and basically steal this page to create a bunch of topics for us automatically. All right, so I'm going to copy this URL, and I'm going to paste it right here where it says link to online content. We're going to simply paste this in from the labs. Again, this will only work if you have an HTTPS website. So make sure it's kind of a secure site before you attempt to do this, okay? All right, so we're going to go ahead and hit add. And you could add multiple sites here if you wanted to. So you can actually have multiple links here that you provide to be able to send to Power Virtual Agents. All right, so we're going to go ahead and hit start once you have that URL plugged in here after you click add. And when you hit start, it's going to spend a few moments here parsing through that site to create multiple suggestions for us. Okay, so it could take a few moments here, but once it's complete, you'll be able to take a look at those suggestions that have now been created for you. So we're going to wait a few moments here for that to complete. Once it has completed, you'll see the suggested will have a number of suggestions that we can look at. So you'll see these are 2 different tabs that you can choose. These are the existing topics that we're already using, and then the suggestions are on the right-hand side that you'll be able to use and select from once it's done getting your suggestions. So I'm kind of waiting for it to finish up top here. Once it finishes up top, we'll be able to take a peek at them. Okay, looks like it's done. It's given us 8 new suggestions, okay? So let's take a look at those suggestions. If you go to click on Suggested here on the right-hand side, you'll get a list of all of the suggestions that are available to you, and you can pick and choose which ones you want, which ones you don't want. You can delete suggestions that you don't think make sense. You can actually add some suggested questions to be legitimate topics. So these are just suggestions at the moment, but if you want to make them reality, then you would select, and don't do this yet, but you would select Add to Existing Topics to add this suggested topic to be an actual one. Now, if there's ones in here that you don't think are useful, you can come in where it says Locate a Store. Well, we already have a topic for locating a store, so if we didn't want this one, we could actually delete this one by hitting the little delete button, and you can go ahead and do that. Click Delete next to Locate a Store under Suggested Topics. And once you do that, it should rather quickly go ahead and delete that topic. Now, if there's other ones that we want, let's say, for example, we want that reset password one at the top, and we want to use that reset password one, and we want to make it an actual topic, you can do a couple things. One, you can look at it. So if I hit reset your password here underneath suggested topics, you can get a little preview of what this topic would look like. So by default, this is, by the way, this is not interactive here. This is just a little preview to let you look at it. But while you're looking at it here, you can see that you have 1 trigger phrase right now. Again, it's suggested that you have 5 to 10 trigger phrases, but this at least gives you a little peek at what's available to you. You can see that what the message is that's going to be sent to your user if it initiates this particular topic. And then if you really like it and you want to add this topic, you can go ahead and hit Add to Topics. You could also delete it, or you could hit Add to Topics and then begin immediately editing it. In our case, we're going to go ahead and hit Add to Topics, this tealish blue button here, almost green button here, to go ahead and add this to our suggested, take it out of our suggested topics and make it an actual topic. So go ahead and hit Add to Topics. That'll take a few moments, and it will take it from the suggested section, and it will move it to the existing section. So you'll now see it's down to 6 suggested topics, and I'm up to 14 existing topics. If I flip on existing topics here, you'll see that new reset your password topic has now been added. And what this does is it now allows my user, if they come into my chat and they're trying to log into their portal. Let's say they purchased something and they forgot their password because they don't purchase things from us on a regular basis. They can now log into our Power Virtual agent, or they can interact with our agent. And when they interact with our agent, if they type in something like reset your password, or if they use the word password, it will likely pick up this topic and help them interact with and figure out how they can reset their password. Now, anytime you use a suggested topic, it's automatically going to leave that new suggested topic off. So you'll see that the suggestion here is turned off. So if you want to use that new suggestion, you'll want to make sure you go ahead and flip it from off to on. So go ahead and click that, and you'll notice it'll take a few moments here to turn on that topic. Once you've done that, we are done with Module 3. That's a pretty short one, right? So what we learned in this one was how we can actually use and leverage existing web pages to be able to build out pre-built topics for us. So in this case, we looked at a frequently asked questions page. We used that frequently asked questions page to create really 8 different topics for us, and then we can pick and choose which of those suggested topics we actually like and want to use. So quick module here, but at least it gives you an idea of how you can do that little interaction to initiate and create topics. All right, let's flip back over here to our slides for a little bit. And what we're going to transition into now is talking about, I would say, a little bit more advanced topics. What this topic is going to be focused in on is how you can really improve or enhance your chatbot with variables, with topic redirects, and with entities. So we're going to look at several different things here. We're also going to talk about a feature called slot filling and discuss what slot filling is and how it can be useful to you and how you can really optimize your chatbot to leverage slot filling. So there's a couple key terms that we're going to get out of this module. All right, so as far as our schedule, we're moving along here. And we're going to be, again, looking at how we can create chatbots that are more intelligent, that leverage variables, that allow, and the whole purpose of variables here is to allow me to pass a value from one part of an interaction to a later part of an interaction. So say, for example, I'm having a conversation with a customer and they say that they would like a refund on their Samsung Series 7 device. If they say Samsung Series 7, I want to capture that and store it in a variable, so that way I can use it later on within the conversation. So that's kind of the point of the variables here, is to store information and then use that information later on. So you'll see we'll actually kind of leverage variables quite a bit in these next set of demonstrations. All right. This slide actually just repeats what we just talked about. The variables allow us to kind of keep and store information and pass it along to later parts of our interaction. And then slot filling. I mentioned slot filling, but haven't discussed it yet. So slot filling you can kind of think of as Mad Libs. I'm not sure how many of you played with Mad Libs as a kid, where you had this story and there was a bunch of blanks and you had adjectives and nouns and things like that that had blanks that you had to fill in. That's basically what slot filling is. Slot filling is you have blanks and you need to fill in and plug in phrases or words into those blanks with information that's provided with inside the chat conversation. So what slot filling means here is I have blanks or variables that I need to fill, so that oftentimes those slots can be used and leveraged as variables, and I want to plug information into those variables, okay? We're also going to look at how you can skip slot filling in some cases and how you can actually skip questions based on the interactions that you have. We're going to discuss that a little bit later, but there's this kind of concept of proactive slot filling, where you have these variables that need to be filled, but rather than asking a question, if your user gives you more information than you needed, can I take that extra information and actually plug it into various variables or slots later on? So that's kind of proactive slot filling that we'll learn about a little bit later. All right, so we're also going to learn about redirecting topics as well. So the idea of redirecting topics is you're not going to build one topic that covers every interaction that you have. You're not going to build one topic that's going to handle everything that your company needs to do. You're going to create multiple small topics for a couple reasons. One, it makes it easier for you to maintain. So if you needed to come in and edit a topic, you're not looking at this really big authoring canvas that's so huge it's difficult for you to interact with. But you're also creating multiple topics so that they're more segmented and easy to interact with, and you can redirect them. So I can have a conversation about lawn maintenance, but then very quickly redirect to a conversation or a topic on resetting your password. And that can all be done within the same chat interaction, but just based on the conversation that happens within the conversation tree, it will be able to redirect those conversations rather easily. So we're going to learn about how you can actually manage and redirect topics. All right, so let's jump into our next one here. So our next one's a little bit lengthier, not nearly as short as the last one, but this one might be one of the most important ones of the class here. So it's a pretty in-depth one. It's a good one to be pretty comfortable with. So if you need, again, just a reminder, this is on YouTube Live, so if you need to rewind, look at something a second time, if I go too fast through one element for you, go ahead and rewind a little bit and watch it a second time. Take your time through this one. This one's going to be some of the more important details. Even though it's a slightly more advanced than what we've done so far, it's pretty critical for you. All right, so this one is going to be with inside lab number 4. Okay, so as you're looking at your class files, you're going to open up lab number 4, which is improve your chatbot with entities, variables, and I think the last piece there is with topic redirects. So looking at within lab number 4, the scenario here is actually drawn out for you. And I recommend you read some of the first paragraphs within the labs because they do set the scenario pretty well for you within here. So I mentioned that slot filling is kind of like the concept of Mad Libs. If you've ever done that as a kid or maybe even sometime recently with your own kids, I have some little ones, that's why I definitely remember Mad Libs. It's the idea of taking values and filling in slots or filling in blanks. And those slots in this case are often considered variables where I want to fill in some kind of value with inside of those. And you have this idea where you can even kind of proactively pull information that maybe you get information earlier than you expected, and you can store that information earlier and pass it in and fill slots later on, so you can even skip questions that you might normally ask. We're going to get an experience of that a little bit later, but definitely worth reading some of the prologue here to the lab because it gives you a good overview of this concept of not only slot filling but proactive slot filling. Okay, so in this lab, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be leveraging some variables, and we're going to be capturing things like product information, store locations, even some personal data that we want to collect and store within inside some variables. So we're going to be getting to a point where we're going to create a new topic that's going to be focused on a customer that's asking to return a product. Okay, so customers, the topic relation here is I have a product, it's not working, I want to return it. So that's kind of your business case here. And our customer's first interaction with us is they leverage our chatbot, or our Power Virtual Agent, to be able to determine how can they return a product. Okay, so that's the goal of this one. And what we're going to be doing through this one is we're going to be actually creating this topic from scratch. We're not going to copy one like we did previously. And we're going to actually make multiple nodes in here to be able to handle this interaction. Okay? All right, so first things first, we're going to flip back to my web browser. And we are going to create a new topic. So with inside Power Virtual Agents, which we're still looking at, I never left it, you're going to make sure you're looking at the topics page here. Okay, so make sure you're still looking at topics. You shouldn't have left it, but in case you did, go ahead and flip back over to topics. And with inside of topics, we're going to flip and click on new topic. So we're starting a topic from scratch this time. All right. So once you select new topic, we're then going to tell it what do we want to name the topic. So we want to name this topic return items. So go ahead and give it a name, return items. Okay. And I'm not going to, for interest of time here, I'm not going to give it a description, but when you're doing this in real life here, you definitely want to provide a pretty thorough description. So in case someone comes in here afterwards, after you, and sees this, they know exactly what this topic is designed to do. Okay? Then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create some trigger phrases. We'll start with one, but again, you really should add 5 to 10 trigger phrases to make this topic really effective. But the one trigger phrase that we're going to add is, I want to return a product. And we'll add that trigger phrase here. Okay, so you can see that one trigger phrase has been added. You can remove trigger phrases. You can add more trigger phrases. Again, it's recommended that you have 5 to 10 trigger phrases. Once you've done that, go ahead and save this topic. So save your work early and often. I'll go ahead and hit save in the top right. And that will take a moment here to save our topic. Once it does that, we are ready to launch. Oh, and I got one error here. Let's see. Oh, the error, I know what the error is for. The error is because we have a blank message. So don't worry about that too much. Let me go back so you can see the same thing I'm seeing. If you see an error, that's okay. We're about to correct the error here in a moment. I just noticed that, and you can click on errors and see where they go. Don't worry about actually clicking that because we're about to go to the same place anyway. Where I do want you to click on is the Go to Authoring Canvas button right above the error. In fact, if you do click one error, it'll take you to the exact same place. So either way, it's fine. But go ahead and click on Go to Authoring Canvas. And when you do, it's going to launch the authoring canvas, which is the same thing we've seen previously, that has on the very top any trigger phrases you have. Right now we just have the one. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add in a message. So the message here, which you can, by the way, copy and paste from the labs. If you're looking at the labs, this is on page 4 of the labs. The phrase here that we're going to use is, sorry to hear you're not happy with your purchase. So I'll go ahead and type it here. I can help with that, or help you with that. Okay. All right, so we got our first message that returns back. Next, we want to add a question. So we're just kind of greeting the user, telling them we're sorry that they're unhappy with their product. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a question. So you'll click the little Add Node button below the message. Okay, so you'll click the little plus sign here, and we're going to ask a question. So go ahead and select Ask a Question here. And that'll add in a new question node. Now, what's the question we're going to ask? We're going to ask them, what was the purchase price? Because here's what we're kind of digging into. Our company, here I'm kind of making up a rule here just to show you different scenarios of what you might do with inside Power Virtual Agents. But here's the rule for our company. Within our company, if we have a company that's a product that sells for more than $2,000, then they need to return it to the store. You know, this is just a made-up rule because I'm making up a rule so I can show you how you can do some conditions and things like that in here. If our product has been sold for less than $2,000, then you can ship it. You can send it back to us. You can mail it back to us. Okay? Part of that may be, you know, you could turn that made-up rule into a real thing. Maybe it's that we don't want to have to purchase the shipping insurance on something that's more than $2,000. So if we need to know the price of the product they purchased to give them better directions, then in our question, we're going to ask, what was the purchase price of the item you want to return? Okay. So we're asking that question. You will see there are some formatting options that you have in here. You can add links, you can add bulleted list, numbered list, italicize, and bold as well. So you can kind of really format things in here if you wanted to. All right, so based on our return policy, we're going to give them different information back. And we also want to validate the value that they plug in. So if I ask them something like, what was the purchase price of your product, and they type in blue instead of a number, then obviously I want to be able to validate the type of data that they provide. And that's where this identify property comes into play. This identify property taps into the entities that you have within inside of Power Virtual Agents. And so it does a couple things. One, it will actually validate the values that they're typing in are correct. So if I ask them how much the price of a product was, and they say blue instead of 50 or $50 or put a 50 with a dollar sign, all of those would work. They can actually type even the word 50 as spelled out. They can type F-I-F-T-Y, and that will work too because it's a number. Power Virtual Agents is smart enough to say, oh, you typed in the word 50 and redirect it as the number 50. So it's able to interpret that for you. But if they type in something totally different, like the color blue for how much the product was, then that is where there's a couple validation steps here for you. So in the identity property here, what we're going to do is we want to ensure that they provide us a number. So instead of using the multiple choice option, which we had in our previous example, we're instead going to flip this to look for a number. And so the identify here, again, is really designed to help Power Virtual Agents validate the types of values that they're typing in. So if they type in blue for a number, it will likely ask them to try again, kind of thing. So we're going to use the pre-built number property here, and that way it validates that they're typing in an actual number. Even if they spell out the number, it's going to validate that it's a number. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get our first use of variables. And so to use the variable, we want to take the value that they type in for this question and store it in a variable. So to do that, you'll see this option here called Save Response As. And right now it has kind of a blank variable here for us. But if you select this, you can edit the variable, and it has a little pop-up pane on the right-hand side. And you can give the variable name, you can tell it what's the scope of the variable, you can play with it quite a bit. And you can even use variables across multiple bots if you needed to. There's a lot you can do with these. Now in this case, we're going to give the variable a name, and we're going to call this one purchase price of return. So we'll call this purchase price of return. Okay, so that's the name of the variable that we have here. And then again, you can define what's the scope of the variable. So right now, this variable is scoped just limited to this topic, meaning it can't be used in any other topic. And we're going to leave it that way, but just so you know, you could make it so that this variable could be used across any topic within inside of this bot. So that's an option as well. Okay, all right, so once you've named it, purchase price of return, go ahead and save. You might want to save multiple times while you're working on this, but go ahead and save this so it saves the work that we've done thus far. Okay, all right, so our variable has now been created. Next, now that we have the information about how much their purchase price was, we now want to redirect the next part of this conversation based on their answer to that. So if they say they purchased something that's more than $2,000, then I'm going to direct them to locate their closest store. Remember, we did the location of store conversation already, so I could redirect that conversation to another topic. Or if they say, hey, I purchased something for $200, that's less than $2,000, I'm going to direct them on how they can ship something back. Okay, so let's go ahead and add our next node in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to create this condition. So it's kind of like an if statement here. So we're going to add in a new node below the question right here by hitting the Add Node button. And the node that we're going to add is a condition node. Okay, so when you add a condition node, this is basically a split. It's splitting our conversation multiple ways when we select this. So I'm going to select Add a Node or Add a Condition. And if you're adding a condition, you're always going to have more than one path, right? It's either this or that, or you could add multiple paths. And for our scenario, we want our paths to look at our variable value. So we created this variable to store the information that was replied to our question about the price. And we want to look at that variable in our condition to determine how we're going to direct this path. So we'll say that if the variable value purchase price of return, let's zoom in on this, if the variable value of purchase price of return is, let's say, less than, you could say less than or equal, whatever, let's say less than. If it's less than $2,000, then your then part is down here. So we would define next what we want to happen if the purchase price is less than $2,000. So here's what we would do. We'd say, we'd add like a new message under here. So we would add like a new message right here. So we would hit the little plus sign to add another node. And we would add a message node to tell them, okay, well, if it's less than $2,000, here's what you do. So we'd say show a message. And the message that we want to show them is, let me unzoom for a moment. It's actually in the labs. So if you want to copy and paste it from the labs, you can. It's on page 8. And it's this right here. You can return item or items to by mail, it's kind of oddly worded, to Contoso returns, and then it gives you the address. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it into my message here. By the way, you can also add any kind of formatting you want. So if I really wanted to have the bold text in here in certain areas, you could do that. You can format it however you want to make it really clear to your users. Okay? All right, good deal. So really this kind of ends this part of the conversation. It ends this part of the condition, because if the product is less than $2,000, we're going to tell them they can go ahead and return the item by mail right here. And then if we're happy with that, if that really should end our conversation, then we can tell it that we want to add a new node to end the conversation with a survey. Okay, let me show that one more time. So if we're happy with this message, that should be the end of all of our conversation that has to do with products less than $2,000. Then we could add one more final node here. Sorry, my mouse is going a little wonky on me here. Let me try that again. We can add a new node to end the conversation, and we want to end with a survey. And this would send it to a system topic to end the survey itself. All right, so that's going to end the conversation with a survey. Now, for our other path, we really need to determine what we're going to do with our other condition. And we can kind of assume that if it's not less than $2,000, then it's obviously more than $2,000. So we don't need to kind of define this condition because it's really everything else. And so what we're going to do is we're going to tell them and basically point them to our topic about finding the location of the store that they need to return the product to. Because again, our policy is if the product is more than $2,000, then they need to return it to a store. If it's less, they can mail it. So if it's more than $2,000, then we're going to add another question here. So we'll add a new node, and the question that we're going to ask is, do you know your nearest store location? Okay. Now this is pretty straightforward, right? You're not expecting a complex answer to this question. It's really yes or no. And when you have a yes or no or a true or false, that's when you would use a Boolean identify type. Ooh, my mouse keeps scrolling up. Here we go. You would use a Boolean type here, just like you would in traditional databases or CDS. They all have Boolean types where you can return back true or false values. So the answer to this question, let me add a question mark here. The answer to this question should be true or false. So based on that, we want a Boolean, which you can see right here, a positive or negative response is extracted for this. And the way that this would appear to your users is it would actually pop up two buttons, yes or no. So just like we had in that previous example where we had the different stores and they could select Redmond or Seattle or Bellevue as a button, the users are going to have a button response option here that's yes or no to be able to select whether or not they know their nearest store. Okay? So that's it for that one. So if they know the store, yes or no, we now want to take the response and store that in a variable as well. So based on whether or not they respond yes or no to this, we're going to store that in a variable by selecting save response as variable here. And then in the top right, you're going to give this new variable a new name. And this variable's name is going to be knows store location. Okay, so if they know the store location, it'll return back true. If they don't know the store location, it'll return back false. Okay, so go ahead and give that variable a name. I would recommend go ahead and save while you're at it as well. So go ahead and hit save in the top right. I should be saving more often than I am right now just to make sure everything gets saved in here. But you'll see here now, it's going to ask the question, and based on the response, it's going to store that in a variable just like it did in our previous example. Okay. All right, after that question node, we're going to add in a second condition. The second condition here is going to return back based on if they answer true or false, or yes or no, on that question about if they know their store location. So if they do know their store location, I'm going to send them down one path. If they don't know their store location, then I'm going to do a topic redirect to the topic that we created in our previous example. Remember that previous example we did where we have where they can determine what their store location is, it's closest to them. We're going to redirect to that topic based on that. Okay, so we're going to add in another condition here under our question node right here. And this new condition is going to read in our variable just like it did previously. We're going to read in our variable that's called knows store location. Okay, so knows store location is going to return back. And if they do know their store location, that's going to return back true. So you'll see there's two possible responses here, true or false. That's because we did a Boolean type before. So we're going to make this one set to true. Okay. And if they do know their location, then we don't really need to do anything else. We can be done with them and send it off their way. We don't need to really do anything else. We could actually send this to end the conversation if we wanted to here. So we could say end with a survey. Okay? So if they know their store location, they don't need any more information from us. If they don't answer yes to that, then it's assumed that it's going to go down my right path. And the right path is all other conditions, which would be, for example, no, they don't know their store location. So if they don't know their store location, then what I want to do is I want to redirect them to the topic that we already created that answers that question. This is part of the idea here of creating little segmented topics. Rather than having one large topic to cover everything, I want to have smaller topics that can answer the questions, and then I can interconnect them together. Okay? All right, so with inside our right path on that condition, we're going to add in a reference to another topic. So you'll see there's an option here for if they answer no, they don't know their store, that we want to send them to another topic. So you can select go to another topic here. And then the topic that we want to send them to is get store locations. That's the one that we created or we kind of modified together. We made a copy of and we did our own thing with. So we'll select get store locations on that. Okay. All right. So we've created this redirect. Let's go ahead and save this now that we've done that. And let's test it out. Let's see what we've done and verify this is going to work the way we think it's going to work. Now, as we test this one out, there's another thing I want to point you to over here on the left-hand side. There is, within this section right here, an option to actually monitor the variables. So if you want to watch the topic variable values, and as they change over time, you want to see that, you can turn on this option right here to kind of monitor your variable values and see how does it go through your path based on the variable selection you have. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. You can see the two variables that I have, and then I'm also going to turn on test your bot. So I can actually test this as we go. And I can start to ask some questions. So if I want to know, let's say, for example, how to return a product, I can type in the question, how to return a product. And just as we did before, make sure you have the track between topics turned on, so that way you can see how it's flowing between your topic. All right, so once I have that, I'll hit enter. And that'll take us up. Here's our topic tracking here. I can see here's where we started. It gave us a response. Sorry to hear you're not happy with your purchase. Then it asked us the question, what was the purchase price of your item? And this is where we can actually tell it, how much did we pay for this item, so that way we can track the flow, and maybe we give one example of what it was like, what the experience would be like if it was above $200 or $2,000, I mean, and what the experience would be like if it was below $2,000. So let's say this first one is $200. So this first purchase is $200, so it allows me to mail it back. So it gave me information about how I can mail this back. Now maybe I add a message in here and actually tell the customer that our policy says all products less than $2,000 have to be brought in. But here in this case, because the product is less than $200, I told them they can return the item by shipping it here. And I can tell them whether it answered the question or not. All right, so that's kind of one flow of how this would work. And you likely saw as we were going through that flow, I didn't kind of highlight it here, but the variable topic tracking here actually showed the changing values in our variables as we went. Let's try this one more time. I'm going to hit the reset button here and flow through this one more time. So let's hit reset. And this time, I'm going to ask, again, how to return a product. All right. It's going to ask us how much our product was. This time, I'm going to say our product was $3,000. And it's going to send us down a different path. It's going to say, do you know the nearest store location? Also notice here that it's storing the variable values below. So we're actually able to see how it's flowing through here and what the variables are storing and that they're storing properly. And I'm going to say, no, I don't know the nearest store, so I'll hit no. And when I say no, you'll see the other variable value here. And then it does our topic redirect. So our topic redirect this time is redirecting to a new topic. We are now actually engaged with a new topic here. The get stored locations topic has been launched. And now I'm interacting and looking at that topic that we created previously. So I can tell it that I want to look at the Bellevue store, and then it'll give us information about the Bellevue store here. Okay? So that we learned a couple things there. We learned, one, about how we can leverage Boolean identity values and entities. We also looked at how we can leverage variables, conditional statements, and we looked at topic redirects there as well. So a lot of fun stuff there that we played around with to learn how to use and leverage these new features. All right, let's go ahead and hide our bot. Hide our test bot here down in the bottom left for now. And let's learn a little bit more about entities. And essentially what I want to do with entities is I want to capture what type of product our customer has. Okay, so let's say, for example, they're trying to return a particular device, and I want to know what type of device they're returning, and I maybe also want to be able to provide information about the basic shipping methods they have available to them. So let's actually focus on shipping methods for this one. So in this example, I want to create a custom entity that stores the different methods that my company ships products. So I want to provide the shipping options to them. I want to provide and show them that we do expedited shipping. We do store pickup. It's not really shipping. It's more just how they can come pick up something at the store. And I also do other types of standard shipping as well. So to create this, and the whole point of creating this entity is so that it's a little clearer to our users. Whenever they go to ask about shipping, we can give them predefined information about shipping. The other benefit to doing an entity here is it gives you two features available to you. One called smart matching. And what smart matching does is it will do things like it'll correct misspellings. So if a customer said they wanted expedited shipping, but they misspelled expediting because it's a little tougher word, it will do spell checking and automatically realize that, hey, they meant expedited. Let me make sure that I return back information about expedited shipping, even though they didn't type that. The other benefit that you have with entities is that you can create synonyms, okay? And so synonyms give you the ability to predefined synonym words. So if somebody says they want expedited shipping, but they don't type expedited, they type in fast shipping, you can create a synonym for the word fast, and when they say fast shipping, you're telling Power Virtual Agents that they really want expedited shipping. So there's several benefits to doing entities here, and you're going to see that as we do our example here. So let's go ahead and jump into this one here. We're going to create a new entity by going over to Entities in the top left. Okay, so go ahead and select Entities. This is a new area we haven't explored yet. So we'll select Entity here. And we're going to create a new custom entity at the top. Okay, and this new custom entity is going to be around product shipping or shipping options. Okay, so create the new custom entity, and we're going to call this shipping options. That's the name of the entity. You should, of course, give the entity a description so people know what this is if they're coming into it afterwards. And then you also want to ensure that smart matching is turned on. This is the feature I mentioned before that basically does grammar checks, misspelling checks, variations of words. It helps, without you having to do anything, it helps correct issues that your users might have typed things in slightly incorrect. Okay? So make sure that's already turned on. It should be on by default. Then on the right-hand side, you're going to give it a list of values. So you can kind of think of these as like rows in a table. So think of an entity as almost like a table, and then the list items are like rows within inside that table. Okay? So we want to add in an entity list item called standard shipping. That's one of the possible options that we have. So we're going to type in standard shipping here, and we're going to add this list item. Okay, so let me zoom in on this for you. Type in standard shipping as a list item, and then click add. Okay, let's go ahead and type in a couple more list items. We're going to also type in expedited shipping, and then add that one. And we're going to type in store pickup in case someone would like an option to have it shipped to the store and then pick it up from the store. All right, so we'll select and type in store pickup and then click add here again. All right, so we have our three items within this entity: standard shipping, expedited shipping, and store shipping. With those three items now created, we can define some synonyms for each of those items. So in case a user types in something slightly different, we're still able to capture what they meant to type in, okay? So for standard shipping, for example, we're gonna add in a synonym called complimentary shipping or free shipping. Let's type in free shipping here. And we'll add that as a synonym for standard shipping. And so that way, if they type in free shipping, I know, and Power Virtual Agents knows, they're really talking about standard shipping, okay? We'll also add in one for complimentary shipping, in case they type that in. And then we'll click add for that as well. So these two synonyms can be now correlated with standard shipping. So even if they type in one of these, Power Virtual Agents knows they're talking about this. Okay? All right, so let's add in a couple more. So for expedited shipping, let's add in a couple synonyms for that. So we'll go add in underneath synonyms. For expedited shipping, we're going to add in same-day shipping. Add that one. We'll add in same-day guaranteed, which is kind of similar, but we're going to use the word guarantee here. Okay, same-day guaranteed delivery. We'll use overnight shipping. Let's get the word fast shipping in there just in case. And then we'll add one more for one-day shipping. And then click add. All right, so we've got several synonyms created for this one. By the way, if you're following along the labs, this is on page 18 of lab number 4. All right, so we'll go ahead and select that and hit done. And now this has actually created several synonyms for expedited shipping. So let's do a couple more for store pickup, and then we'll be done with the entity here. So I'll go ahead and add some synonyms for store pickup. And for store pickup, we're going to go ahead and type in store pickup with a space, just in case, kind of covering our bases here. We're going to put in here ship to store. And we'll also add in in-store as another synonym. So again, the point of the synonyms, they could type in this and still get the proper response because we've made sure that they've got that reference. Smart matching is already turned on, so we should be good with this. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save in the bottom right. It's behind my face here right now. You'll hit save over here, and then go ahead and hit that save button. All right, so once that saves, we can now leverage this entity within inside of a topic. In fact, we're going to create a new topic around shipping options, and then we can leverage some of the other skills that we learned about topic redirects to be able to properly pull this in together. All right, so once this entity saves, it looks like it has saved now. We're going to go over to topics. Let's go ahead and close this entity first. So in the bottom right, go ahead and close this. Okay. And then we're going to go up to the top left to find topics. Okay, and we're going to create a new topic called shipping options. So create a new topic here. And this new topic will be called shipping options. Okay. Then, like we mentioned before, it's best to add 5 to 10 different phrases. We're going to add several phrases this time, and rather than just one like we did last time, we'll say, what are my shipping options? We'll say, can I have... Again, remember what trigger phrases are. These are what are going to initiate this topic. So they need to ask something similar to one of these phrases for this topic to be kicked off. So I'll say, can I have free store pickup? Okay, let's also add in, can I get free shipping? Okay, let's also add in to, do you provide same-day shipping? And then one last one, how much does shipping cost? That's probably a very important one to have. But that integrates in multiple trigger phrases that your users could potentially type in. And again, as a reminder, trigger phrases do not have to be perfect. If they type in something like, free store pickup, it's going to recognize that they use part of a trigger phrase that does exist here and initiate this topic to make sure that it's leveraged and used. Okay? All right, so once you have added those trigger phrases, we're going to go ahead and hit save in the top right. So make sure you save before we move on. And then we're going to, once the save is completed, launch the authoring canvas. So you'll click on go to authoring canvas right here once you have created those trigger phrases and hit save. All right. So if you're following along in the labs, we're now on to task number 3 on page 20. Yep, page 20. And what we're going to do is we're going to, first we want to add in some kind of message. So whenever this topic is initiated, we want to provide some message. You'll find on page 20 in the labs that the message we're going to place in here is, we provide different shipping options to help you get your order as fast as you want. So I'm going to steal this. You can take it from the lab if you want. You can copy and paste it if you want. I'm going to copy this from here rather than typing it all. Like I said, it probably would be a good recommendation to have the labs open as you're going through this class. And I'm going to paste that in here. We provide different shipping options to help you get your order as fast as you want. So that's the first response to this trigger phrase. We want to send them some kind of message just to recognize that they're engaged with the proper topic here. Then we're going to ask a question. So the question we want to ask here is, which shipping method do you want? So we'll add another node here, and we'll ask a question. And the question we're going to ask is, which shipping method do you want? Okay. Now remember, we created this entity a few moments ago, and this is now where we're going to leverage that entity, because we want to provide a list of the options, kind of like we had buttons before for the store locations, Bellevue, Redmond, Seattle. we want to have buttons for each of those options. So we want to have an expedited shipping, a standard shipping, and in-store pickup kind of thing. We want those as buttons so our users can pick those, but if they type something different, rather than just selecting the buttons, which they can do, I'm hoping that one of my synonyms will pick up what they type in and then redirect them to one of those three options anyways. All right, so for the identify section here, this is where we're going to select our entity. So we'll select and change it from multiple choice options to, you're going to actually type and search up at the top here for shipping options. Okay, so as you type it, you'll find it'll kind of return itself back here. But you're going to search for shipping options and then select that entity that we created. Okay. And then, if you want, you can actually tell it that you want to select options for the users. Basically, you want to give them these options as checkboxes. So if you choose this select options for users, it will allow you to decide which of these options do you want to display. So you could actually leverage one entity for multiple use cases. So the idea here with the entity is I could select it, and maybe that entity is leveraged across multiple topics. And so I could just check certain list item values here if I want to be used within this question, and then use the same entity in another question, and then don't select all the options if I wanted to. That's what this is for. Okay, so in this one though, I want to go ahead and use each of these. So I'm going to go ahead and check each of these entity list item values to be leveraged as part of this question. And you can see here it's going to show up as buttons for our users to select. Okay, all right, so those are going to show up for our users as buttons to select. But I want to take the output of their selection and store it in a variable. So I'm going to select the variable option right here and take the output of whatever they type in here as a variable value. So let's go ahead and select the variable save response as, and then in the top right, we're going to rename this variable, and we're going to rename it shipping method. So come up to the top right, rename this variable shipping method, okay? And then as usual, I'd go ahead and recommend that you save pretty frequently. Since we're already up in the top right, let's go ahead and hit save here to make sure that this conversation tree has been saved for what we've done thus far. All right, so once we get a response, we now need to determine how do we want to direct that response. Are we going to respond differently based on the shipping option they select? Probably. So in that case, if we're going to respond differently, then we need to create a condition. So in this scenario, we're going to go ahead and add a condition node right after our question. So we'll add a condition after our question node that we have. And we're going to actually have multiple paths that this condition can take. So we'll start off with this first one for now, but you can add multiple conditions here. So you're going to need to add multiple eventually. What you'll do to add multiple conditions, you can go ahead and do one more here with me. You're going to come up to where it says add node, and then add another condition node, and it basically will spit it out 3 ways instead of just the 2 ways we had a moment ago. Okay? So that's what you'll do whenever you have the need to have multiple conditions. And we'll eventually we'll need to add a third one here as well. But for the time being, let's just go ahead and work with the expedited shipping and then the store pickup, and then we'll work on, we could almost assume that the last condition is all others, or we may want to actually have a specific condition for our final option there. Our final option being standard shipping. Okay, so under the conditions, we're going to leverage the shipping method variable, and we'll select the variable here called shipping method. And we're going to say when the shipping method is equal to this time, when it's equal to expedited shipping, then we want to go down this path. When the shipping method is equal to store pickup, then we want to go down this path. And then again, you can choose whether or not it makes sense to add another node here to handle the standard shipping. I think it does make sense because you don't want to assume they're going to click the buttons. They could actually type in a value different from what you have as buttons listed. So in that scenario, you would want to actually add a fourth option here. So we're going to add one more condition. Okay? And in this fourth condition, or really the kind of third in order, in this third condition, we're going to add this as a shipping method, and it's going to be standard shipping. This fourth one that we have way over on the right-hand side, this is if they type in something that we're not able to interpret. So if they type in, 27 when we're asking them about shipping methods, then we'll the Power Virtual Agents will direct them down to this fourth condition. That's for all other conditions, and that's where you might want to send them to a live agent or something like that. Okay. All right, in fact, we're gonna go ahead and do that. So if they type in something other than these first three options, I wanna send them to and transfer them to a live agent. So to transfer them to a live agent here, let me go ahead and close my variable menu here so you can see a little better. We're gonna hit the plus sign after our all other conditions node, and we're gonna select that we want to transfer them to a live agent. And you can do that by going down to end the conversation, transfer to agent, okay? And by doing that, they basically typed in something that our virtual agent is not able to interpret, and so we want to send them to a live person. Okay, and you can actually plug in a message here of what you want to send to the live person. So it could give them a little context of why they're getting this message. All right, good deal. So for the remaining conditions, we want to send some kind of a message to our users, and you're definitely going to want to have your labs open for the PDF open for this one, because we're going to do some copy and pasting here. But we want a message after each one of these condition nodes. So we're going to add in a message here, we're going to add in a message here, and we're going to add in a message here, because we're going to have some different information to provide to them depending on what they select as far as the shipping method. Okay. The thing you want to look at here when you're looking at the labs, I'm going to drag them over here for a moment, is really between page 24 and 25. I guess it starts on page 25. You're going to copy this message and paste it into the message that's going to be sent to your users. So for expedited shipping, we want to send them this. For store shipping, we want to send them this. For standard shipping, we want to send them this. And so you can kind of see what we're going to end up copying and pasting in here. So for expedited shipping, we'll paste this in. You'll notice the formatting is not perfect immediately, so you can actually fix it in here. That's nice that it actually has some formatting capabilities built into the message nodes here, so I can tell it that I want to send this back with these bullet points. You can even bold the text, so really draw their attention on certain areas of the text here. I can bold this. Oop, not paste. Let's do bold. There we go. So you can enjoy expedited shipping at $10, bold that, and you can bold anything else in here that you might think is relevant that you really want to draw their attention to. Okay, so that's kind of baked in here. You have the ability to do some formatting. Then for our store pickup, we're going to copy and paste from, again, page 25, the message that's provided in the lab.
And Matt's putting this in the chat window also.
Oh, thank you, Matt. I appreciate you putting that in the chat for us. So we're bolding certain areas here just so it draws their attention to the key elements that we really want them to see. And then finally for standard shipping, we'll go ahead and bring that one in as well. I'm trying to copy and paste it myself here. So I'll paste this in here. And you can, of course, bold certain elements of the text so that way it stands out to your end users. All right, good deal. So we've got those three messages that we're bringing back. We're going to wrap up this part of the conversation with a survey. So depending on which thing they selected, they got the information they needed, and we're going to send them to a survey to make sure that they are happy with the results. It is always recommended that you end with a survey, so that way you can get those analytics returned back, and you'll know whether or not you're getting your actual bot is performing the way it should perform. So always end with a survey, unless you're transferring them to a live person. Ending it with a survey actually brings back some analytics for you to review later. All right, so I'm going to add in at the bottom here, end the conversation and end with a survey. Okay, and remember, you don't have to do that multiple times. You can actually connect all three of these messages to the same output. And so just a reminder of how we did that before. Let me zoom in on this for you. You'll hit the plus sign, and you'll see this little pink dot here. That pink dot, you're going to drag that pink dot on top of the other dot, and then it kind of merges all these together so you don't have to do it multiple times. So same thing here with standard shipping. I'll hit the little dot, drag the pink dot on top of the end of conversation. Okay? So that way it just saves you some time. You don't have to constantly redo the same thing over and over and over here. All right, so let's test this out. Let's see how this bot's going to work. Before we do, let's make sure we save it. If we don't save this, then all the work we've done won't actually show. So make sure you go to the top right and go ahead and save the changes that we've done thus far. All right, and then we're going to launch the test your bot in the bottom left that we've done a couple times now. All right, so we'll launch the test the bot, make sure that track between topics is turned on, and we're going to initiate a conversation here. So here's how we'll start this. We're going to ask, what are my shipping options? Oh, and by the way, you may want to show the variables. So let's turn on the variables here. Let's say, what are my shipping options? Now you'll see, based on the topic that we've created, we've now created 2 on our own. We copied 1 previously, but we've created 2 on our own. And in this one, it does bring back the different options. It's leveraging the entity that we created. It's giving us the different options that we can select from here. We could select expedited shipping if we wanted here. Go ahead and select that. And it's going to return back the information for expedited shipping. Perfect. Looks great. You can then tell it whether or not the question was answered. Let's go ahead and say yes. And then it sends us to a survey. So good interaction that you have here. Nice capabilities for being able to interact with the solution that we did here. Okay. And the whole time you could actually see the variable interaction that we had was displayed in the top there as well. So let's try one more though. Let's go ahead and reset this conversation. And let's again start with, what are my shipping options? Okay. And then what I'd like to do this time is kind of take a different path here. And I want to show you how synonyms work. So rather than selecting one of these buttons, so we have these nice buttons here we could optionally select, but let's say my user doesn't select those options. Instead, they type in the word fast shipping. They can do that. They can type in rather than using it. But when they type in fast shipping, it's going to leverage the synonyms that we created on that entity, and we're able to actually see it return back the same information for expedited shipping, even though they didn't type that in. So the synonyms here helped be able to define this properly. All right, let's reset one more time. So go click the reset button on the top again. This time we're going to ask the question totally different, and I want to show you how that proactive slot filling works. So we talked about proactive slot filling earlier in the slides. A reminder of what proactive slot filtering does, slot fitting does, is it's going to automatically take a value that my user has and plug it in. So my bot doesn't have to ask a question that my user already answered. So if we were to ask the question, do you have fast shipping? I would expect my bot not to ask the question about what kind of shipping you want. I should be able to skip that part, right? If they've already told me they want fast shipping. So let's test this out again. So in this case, we've reset our bot, and we're going to ask the question this time, do you have fast shipping? And if this were to use that proactive slot filling, then it would skip the question asking about what type of shipping they want and go straight to the information about expedited shipping. And it did. So if you look here, we asked the question, do you have fast shipping? If you look at the topic tracking on the right-hand side, it actually skipped the question, which shipping method do you want? Because we already answered that question within inside of our first interaction, and it went straight down to provide the information for expedited shipping. That's pretty great service, right? I didn't even have to ask additional questions. Power Virtual Agents here was smart enough to interpret what it was that I wanted to get to and jump straight to the most pertinent information here. So really, really cool capability here. All right, so we got about 20 minutes left of our day here, and there is going to be some stuff left over. So just a reminder, we have pre-recorded this class with all of the completed class available to you. So we provided that. Matt, if you don't mind providing the link to the to the form to fill out so that they can actually have the full class, that would be great. I would appreciate that. And what we're going to do to wrap up with the last 20 minutes is talk a little bit about some best practices and optimization of building your chatbot. So we got enough time for that. One thing I will note here before kind of getting away from our demo here is there is some piece that we're not going to have as much time for that I do want to at least highlight, and it has to do with Power Automate. So Power Automate, and we'll talk about it through the slides at the very least, Power Automate has some great interaction within inside of Power Virtual Agents. So even though we're not going to have a ton of time to look at it during our live session right now, what I would like you to do, I would love for you to do, is after our live session ends, I want you to do Lab 5 and Lab 6, and make sure you do it with the login that we created for you. That login that we created for you, and if you remember in the very beginning of our live session, we actually walked you through how to import a solution and how to take that solution and import the flows from that solution, and we got the Power App all set. Labs 5 and 6 really go deeper into that, and they walk you through how you can leverage Power Automate flows. So kind of get you a picture of what that looks like. If I wanted to actually add in one of those flows, which you are already set up to do, you could leverage them by adding in a, let's actually go down, let's see here. Let's do it right here. Here it is. So I was looking for the little plus sign is what I was trying to find here, where it says add node. You'll see that there's this option here to call an action. And this is really where Power Automate excels. So calling an action allows you to pass in variables from your Power Virtual Agent interaction into Power Automate. And then really once you get into Power Automate, that extends your capability far beyond what you can do just singularly inside of Power Virtual Agents. So if I click on call an action, notice that I have several Power Automate flows available to me that I can interact with. So I could leverage this return an item one. I can leverage this get order info by email. You can even create flows. So if you click on the create a flow button, it will launch Power Automate for you, and it'll allow you to create a flow by launching it directly from within inside Power Virtual Agents. So it's a really powerful part of it. Again, Labs 5 and 6 get deeper into that, and I would very, very much recommend you do that. I actually go over at least one of these in the recordings as well. So take a peek at those labs after we finish our live recording. The way I would want to finish it, if I got into one of those labs, I wouldn't be able to finish it, and I'd feel rushed, and I don't want to rush you guys. So take a peek at 5 and 6 later. Lab number 9 is definitely optional. What lab number 9 is it's more theory or discussion around topic design and best practices and optimizations. So I do want to spend the last bit of time that we have together at least talking about some optimizations that you can do, because we have enough time for that. We won't do the lab, but I do recommend you look at lab 9 later on. Okay, so let's do this. Let's flip back over to our slides for a bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk through the Power Automate integration a bit, and then we're also going to talk through some optimization steps that you can do within Power Virtual Agents as well. All right, so let's talk about, if you've never used Power Automate, what it is. We've talked briefly about Power Automate earlier in our session about it being a workflow automation tool. And so the purpose of this workflow automation tool is to make it so that remedial tasks or tasks that are really best suited for an automation rather than someone manually doing it. Power Automate gives you the ability to automate those types of tasks. It's a great tool. It's very widely used. It has integrations with Power Apps. It has integrations with SharePoint. It has integrations with Power BI. It really has integrations into hundreds of different data sources, even beyond just those couple tools I just mentioned. So you have a lot of different integrations that are available to you when you're working with and leveraging Power Automate. So it's a very, very cool tool. And we, by the way, at Pragmatic Works have several classes on Power Automate. We have an Introduction to Power Automate class that we've just recently updated, and we have an Advanced Power Automate course that we will have updated by the beginning of next week, actually. So we even have some classes that cover the entire Power Platform and how all these items work together. Now, for Power Automate, if it's new to you, it's really designed for this purpose of connecting to data sources, creating automations or creating flows, and then you can create or edit those flows either from your web browser, or you can do it and additionally from your mobile device. So you can actually work on creating Power Automate flows directly from your mobile device very easily. There's a Power Automate application that allows you to create and edit flows. You can even build in things like approvals. So if I want to, before integrating or before adding certain amounts of rows into a data source, or before I add a record into a data set, I can have an approval process that says yes or no, that's okay to do. And I can have that approval process send to groups of users or one user that actually approves the inserting of that individual row that comes in, or whatever you want. You can actually make approvals not necessarily data bound, but you can make it bound by other elements as well. All right, so Power Automate's really powerful for each of these different kind of integrations, and it has hundreds of templates that are pre-built, predefined for you that allow you to connect with and use different scenarios that other people have come up with. So if you're not really sure how Power Automate can work for you yet, take a look at some of the templates that are available inside Power Automate, and it'll give you a good grasp of what you can do. There's hundreds of them, probably bordering on thousands of them now at this point, that you can leverage and use. And they're constantly adding in new data connectors to make it so that you can do more with Power Automate. So we've talked about the data connectors. There's tons of them available, but even if there's a data connection that you want that's not listed, you can build your own custom data connectors. You can connect to data that's in the cloud. You can connect to data that's on premises. So if you have data that's not in the cloud yet, that's okay. You can actually still use that data inside Power Automate by leveraging something called a data gateway. And the purpose of the data gateway is to connect or wire up your data that's not in the cloud into a cloud service like Power Automate. Okay, so if you ever needed to kind of interconnect data that's not in the cloud to the cloud, the data gateway is the way to do that. And that same data gateway is used in other Power Platform tools like Power Apps and Power BI as well. Okay, all right, so the key thing here to know is that the Power Platform as a whole integrates really smoothly together. The data connectors that you have in Power Automate carry over to Power Apps as well as Power Virtual Agents. Because you have that ability to wire in Power Automate into your Power Virtual Agents, you really have a lot of great capability to extend what you can do. And that's really the whole purpose of this Power Automate integration into Power Virtual Agents, is to extend the capability of what Power Virtual Agents can do and to make it more actionable, to be able to get something from your users that they need and not only be able to give them a yes or no answer or give them a response, but also act on it and actually do something with it. For instance, you can actually make it so that if I get a complaint about a product, that I send a Teams message to someone on my product team so that they immediately see that information about what the complaints are that are being sent to our users. So some really interesting integration that you have there. All right, so the integration we've talked about with our chatbots are huge. You can have location-based services as well. So Power Automate gives you the ability to actually determine if someone is in a particular location. It's able to spot where that person is and give them information that's specific to their location. You can do things like two-factor authentications built in. You can also do things like make appointments for users and actually send those appointments directly to a calendar. And you can even integrate in with the AI capabilities that Power Automate has. So if you want to scan like a picture of a receipt and pull out the data from that picture, you can do that. Power Virtual Agent's extremely powerful, and that's why I recommend, of course, following up with a more in-depth class on Power Automate specifically, so that way you can get a little deeper into it. All right, so we're going to hop over lab number 2, talk a little bit more about some other next steps, getting into some more advanced topics here as we start to wrap up in our last 10 minutes. Authentication is definitely a more advanced topic, but the idea of authentication here is giving your chatbot the ability to authenticate to third parties. And so we're mainly just going to talk about this. I'll hop over and show you where you can learn more about it, but I do want to at least tell you how you can set something like that up. So I gave the example earlier today of maybe a chatbot that's been integrated into Microsoft Teams. But within that chatbot that's in Microsoft Teams, I want it to be able to connect into and authenticate to Salesforce.com. So you can actually do that. You can set up an authentication inside your chatbot so it prompts the user to put in their username and password. It authenticates off to that third party and then returns back information from that third party's API. So some really cool capabilities to authenticate to those third party APIs and then provide it all inside the chatbot. Your user never has to leave the chatbot to be able to authenticate to those third parties. All right, so I think we've really, in what I just said, I basically talked through most of this already, but it allows you inside of your conversation tree to actually have steps where you can inject the authentication. In this, you can add this basically call an action, very similar to what we did with Power Automate. You can also call an action to an authentication to another third party. And then again, this gives you the ability to leverage those API capabilities of that third party. It really, one key thing here is it does adhere to all OAuth 2 standard capabilities. So if you're familiar with working with OAuth 2, then it kind of sticks in that same kind of wheelhouse there. And then it also can leverage your Azure Active Directory as well. So it has the ability to tie into that and make authentication to these third parties a little easier. All right, so what I'd like to show you very briefly before we move off to handing off to third parties or handing off to agents is how and where you would need to go to learn more about authentication. All right, so if you're interested in setting up authentication to third parties, that is something that would be done under the Manage section on the left-hand side. So if you look over on the left-hand side, you'll find Manage with inside Power Virtual Agents, and then you'll also find Authentication. Okay, so if I select Authentication, this is where you can see I'm probably not going to spend a ton of time on because there's a lot of data points to fill in. But if you're really interested in learning how to do this authentication to third parties, I would recommend reading up on this section here. It says Learn More About Configuring Authentication. And this has a lot of details about what you would plug into each one of these different points within inside the authentication configuration section here. So this is where you'll plug in things like your tokens to your third-party APIs, your client IDs. This is likely, I mentioned that Power Virtual Agents is all about allowing your citizen developer or your subject matter expert to create these conversations. This probably is not for the citizen developer. This is where you're starting to get into how do I set up authentication to third parties. That's more for your developer to come in and start to help you with, okay? So you wouldn't necessarily, as a citizen developer or as a subject matter expert on how your business runs, be plugging in things like authentication to a secret key and token authentication and that sort of thing. But I do think it's important that you know where this is so you know how that authentication can be set up. Once the authentication is set up, here's how you would use it. Within inside of a topic, so let's go ahead and look at a topic here for a moment. You do not need to follow me on this, guys, just watch. But within inside of a topic, in the same place that we added in the Power Apps flow integration, here it goes, in the same place that we added in the action to go to a flow, you would also see a step here for authenticating as well. Now, I haven't set up an authentication, so when this does pop up, you're not going to see an option to authenticate to your third party. But if you had set up authentication to a third party, you would see another section in here that's specific for authentication. Okay? So I just want to at least show you where that integration would occur if you were doing it within inside of Power Virtual Agents. Okay, let's hop back over.
Hey, Devin?
Yeah.
Nobody believes this is live, but you give a shout out to Brian Lee.
All right, nobody believes I'm live? Wow, okay, so a shout out to Brian Lee. Is that what you said?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, this is real. This is real life. This is, thank you, Brian Lee, for attending. Hopefully he's actually here and not just a shout out for somebody else. All right, so the last piece here that we're going to do, or not last piece, but the last few pieces here we're going to talk about is handing off to a support agent. So Power Virtual Agents does have the ability to hand off to a live person, and that's what the support agents piece is all about here. It works best when you're integrating in with Dynamics. So if you're using Dynamics, Dynamics uses a feature called Omnichannel. That's kind of their chat integration, the Service Hub kind of capabilities. When you integrate in with Dynamics, it's Microsoft, so obviously they make that integration really smooth and easy. If you're not using Microsoft and you're not using Dynamics for a live chat to talk to a live person, then there are capabilities and integrations for those other platforms. They just don't make it as smooth and as easy. So for our company, for example, we use a different kind of live chat tool. So we would have to integrate using another method, and I'll show you where that's at as well. So this section is going to talk about Omnichannel a little bit. Again, Omnichannel is a good tool with inside Dynamics 365 for being able to integrate with a live in-person customer service representative. And so this just continues to talk about Omnichannel a little bit. I'm not going to go super deep into Omnichannel. That's definitely a little bit of a tangent topic here. So let me show you where you would set up integration with a live person. So if you wanted to transfer this to a live person, there is a little bit of setup you need to do first. You'll find that setup up in the top right-hand corner. So if you click on the settings icon here, you'll see there's an option here called Transfer to Agent. And you can just watch this part. Don't actually click with me on this. I'm just showing you this because we're down to 5 minutes or less here. So just watch. But if you click on Transfer to Agent, this is where you would wire up whether or not you're using Dynamics Omnichannel, which is the Dynamics version of kind of this live handoff to a live human agent, Or if you're bringing your own engagement hub, your own service hub, some companies call it, you would select this to be able to configure the integration with your own live chat that you've chosen to use. So this is where you would go to set up the configuration and wire it up. But once you have it wired up, you'll then use things like the transfer to agent option here. And then you'll also use it when it comes to the escalation node. So to show you where that's at, there is a system topic in here called escalation. This escalation node has a bunch of different trigger topics built into it to be able to get you to a live person. So get your customer to talk to a live person. If you ever hit that escalation node, then it's going to transfer you to whatever your live chat feature is, whatever your live chat tool is. Okay, so that's kind of the idea of transferring to a live person. The way I'd like to end with our last few minutes we have here is to talk about some best practices, okay? And so I want to do that in a couple ways. There is a section in here. There's a lot of slides in here that we unfortunately just didn't have time to talk about all the slides. But what they do discuss in these slides is some best practices, and I think it'd be helpful to go over that with our last few minutes here. So let's talk about some guidelines to trigger phrases, because the biggest obstacle that you're going to have is defining proper trigger phrases that actually get hit, because you maybe in the beginning don't know what your users are actually going to type into your live chat or to your chatbot. So defining trigger phrases and defining proper trigger phrases is really important. So there's some good guidelines in the deck, in the PowerPoint deck I'd recommend you take a peek at, but I do want to go over some of them with you here with the last few minutes. One is you want to make sure that you have very clearly scoped trigger phrases. Your trigger phrases should not veer into other topics, is basically what I'm trying to say. You shouldn't have a trigger phrase that could really apply to multiple topics. If you do, that could cause some confusion with inside Power Virtual Agents on which topic they should direct your customers to. So be very concise with the trigger phrases that you have. As I mentioned before, you should have roughly 5 to 10 trigger phrases that you've defined as part of your solution. And each of those trigger phrases should be semantically different in some way. They shouldn't basically be just rephrasing one article, one small word in there. They should be somewhat different between each of the trigger phrases to kick off and be effective. And you should use words that your customers use, right? You don't have, even though this is a automated system, you don't have to make it talk like a robot. And so as you send messages to your users, as you use trigger phrases, make them actually interact with your customers like they would want to be interacted with. And then I mentioned also kind of avoid highly ambiguous trigger phrases, avoid ones that could be confused across multiple topics. So let's take an example. Let's say we were looking at our return an item topic that we created. And a couple key things to point out here. You really want to make sure that your description has a goal. What's the purpose of your topic? And make that very clear. And then you also, like we said, have 5 to 10 trigger phrases built in. Make them short. You don't want to have trigger phrases that are longer than 10 words. They should be fairly short and concise. And then you also want to make sure that those trigger phrases are, like I said, semantically different. They shouldn't be basically the same thing, just with one word different. They should be fairly significantly different. You also should avoid things like articles, or adding articles doesn't really help essentially here. You might add in pluralization. Adding in pluralization doesn't really help. So even if you do make these changes, like add in products versus just product, that's not really making a huge difference. You can do it, if it's just not really helping anything to do it, so you're kind of wasting your time. And then finally, we talked about avoiding ambiguous phrases. The reason for that, and we'll kind of wrap up on this, is you don't want Power Virtual Agents to be confused on which topic should be hit. So in the scenario you see on the screen here, I have 2 topics, one called return an item, one called cancel an order. They're both using a trigger phrase that uses the phrase cancel or cancel order, and so it's a little confused on how it should actually be able to handle that. So there's definitely a lot of good information here. I would recommend kind of taking a peek at the deck a little bit more. There's a lot of slides in there, a lot of good information. But for today, if you have some time to continue with the class, I would recommend that you keep going forward with labs 5 and 6. Those were ones that we didn't get to, but they're pretty good in showing you how you can integrate in Power Automate into Power Virtual Agents. Lab number 9, which is later on, also goes through some best practices. And then if I can give you one tip here to kind of wrap up on, I definitely recommend that you take your time before you jump into the technology. whiteboard your thoughts out, or what my actually preference is to use sticky notes. So I would get a sticky note and list out my topics on a sticky note. So I have a topic for each sticky note. And then underneath those topics, start to think through different trigger phrases that I would have. And then use sticky notes below that to even have things like, what are the different things that I want to have? I want to have a question that asks, how does your lawn look? I want to have a message that I send back to them about, I'm sorry to hear that. To plan things out ahead of time. So use some time ahead of time to plan before you just jump into the technology, and that tends to make things a lot more successful. If you can plan ahead, you can generally make the technology do what you want. If you jump straight into the technology, you oftentimes will feel bound by what you perceive the technology can do. But start planning first and then jump into this later. A couple things to follow up with as well. I definitely recommend, I'll bring up once more, that you sign up for our trial of our on-demand learning, which has even more of this class that you've been sitting in today recorded already on there for free. So if you sign up for the trial at the events page here, it will send you an email with your login information later. You may want to check your junk or your spam to make sure you get it. If you do not get that information about your trial, you can email me, and I will give you my information right here. Let me.
That's in the chat window.
Oh, it's in the chat window. So Brian put it in the chat window already.
There's trials in the chat window too.
Trials in the chat window, perfect. So that's it for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. We're going to be doing more of these sessions coming up. Starting in October, we're going to be doing a session on Azure Data Services. And so look for that to come soon. We're going to be doing kind of a 3-hour overview of Azure Data Services. And that's going to be really focused on, I'm just getting started with Azure. There is a lot that goes into Azure. Like if you were to have someone ask the question, what's Azure? That's like saying, what's Microsoft? It's such a big loaded question that we're going to spend our next Learn with the Nerds session in October talking about how you can get the understanding of all the data services within Azure. There's far more than just data services in Azure, but we're going to be focused on that. And then in December, we're also looking at doing a session on DAX. DAX is the query language for Power BI. So if you're interested in learning more about DAX, we'll be doing more sessions every other month essentially, and they'll all be free. So we look forward to seeing you there soon. And thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you enjoyed the class. Talk to you soon. Thanks.